Hi, my name is Matthew Jester, and this video is Billie Eilish and Post-Hypnotic Suggestions. So I have a certificate of completion to show that I'm certified and competent in the field of hypnosis. This is from MikeMandelHypnosisAcademy.com. Anyways, I also have a news article. This is referencing the celebrity Billie Eilish and the alleged death threat letters that she received. This is from TMZ, so you can go on their website and download the same letters if you would like to. I'll start with my introduction. Please watch my video, Hypnosis, Abuse, and Speech Inhibition. I will leave a link to watch the video in the description. I will also leave additional links in the description about other relevant videos. I've been tortured and abused with hypnosis, and my ability to speak is being inhibited with hypnosis, which is why I have to read everything when I make videos. If you notice me stuttering, speaking slowly, being unable to speak clearly, or any other difficulty speaking, I explain in detail the specific methods and techniques that are being used to inhibit my ability to speak in my video, Hypnosis, Abuse, and Speech Inhibition. These issues speak and occur consistently in each of my videos, specifically within the first 3 minutes. The hypnosis inhibiting my ability to speak is often very noticeable throughout my videos, and I will leave a list of the various hypnotic commands that are specifically being used that can be recognized in my body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, and speech patterns in the description. And if I touch my nose, that is me pointing out hypnotic speech impairment without interrupting the video. So, like I said earlier, this video is Billie Eilish and Post-Hypnotic Suggestions, which is the technical terminology for hypnotic commands. A series of post-hypnotic suggestions and hypnotic metaphors were used on me that specifically pertain to the death threat letters Billie Eilish received from John Matthew Hurl. These post-hypnotic suggestions and hypnotic metaphors were given to me before Billie Eilish ever received the death threat letters, further indicating that the alleged death threat letters were premeditated by the same organized criminal operation that hypnotized me. A metaphor relates two or more unrelated subjects using symbolism. Hypnotic metaphors distract and entertain your conscious awareness and attention with a story so that hypnotic commands can be cued, given, and elicited without being detected or noticed. An isomorphic metaphor relates unrelated subjects using symbolism that relates to a specific situation or problem in an individual's life. Isomorphic metaphors often require understanding of the specific situation or problem the metaphor is related to in order to comprehend and understand the metaphor. Nested loop metaphors are metaphors within metaphors, typically consisting of at least 3 different metaphors. For example, story A tells story B tells story C, then after finishing story C, looping back around to return to and finish story B, then after finishing story B, returning to and finishing story A. The concept may sound fairly confusing, although nested loop metaphors intentionally use confusion to give and elicit post-hypnotic suggestions undetected. So, I'm also going to be referring to nested loop metaphors as embedded loop metaphors throughout the video, just to let you know. So, incomplete metaphors provide an illogical and unreasonable relation between unrelated subjects in all contexts due to incomplete symbolism. So, incomplete metaphors won't exactly make sense. In order to discredit me, I was hypnotized to only be able to articulate incomplete metaphors so that I wouldn't notice, so that I would seem insane or, sorry about that. In order to discredit me, I was hypnotized to only be able to articulate incomplete metaphors so that I would seem insane whenever I attempted to explain any of the hypnotic metaphors they used on me to someone. All of these different types of metaphors were used on me, so several of the metaphors may not make sense and may be very confusing until the specific situations the metaphors are referencing are completely explained and until the nested loops of metaphors are completed. In this video, I'm going to explain the different post-hypnotic suggestions or hypnotic commands and hypnotic metaphors used on me that were related to Billie Eilish and specifically the death threat letters Billie Eilish received. So, I'm going to start with just talking about something called the critical faculty. In hypnosis, there is a concept known as the critical faculty, which is responsible for processing, interpreting, analyzing, and questioning information before acceptance into the unconscious mind. Children under the age of 7 have underdeveloped critical faculties that readily accept information without questioning, processing, analyzing, or interpreting that information. An example of this would be how children believe in the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, etc. In the deep hypnotic trance called somnambulism, which is commonly seen in staged hypnosis shows, the critical faculty can be less capable of rejecting information than that of a small child's. So again, the critical faculty can be less capable of rejecting information than that of a small child's in a very deep hypnotic trance. In fact, hypnosis can be considered extremely dangerous when utilized unethically to make a victim appear to be mentally ill by replicating the presentations of symptoms such as paranoia, hallucinations, and delusions. An example of this is how a young child believing in the Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy, or Santa Claus is obviously completely normal and is not a symptom of paranoia, hallucinations, or delusions. The same is true with hypnosis, although to even more extreme extents. For susceptible individuals, from clucking like a chicken or meowing like a cat to believing they can fluently speak a language they don't even know, and speak complete gibberish thinking that they're fluently speaking a different language, like believing they're actually communicating. And to believing their tennis shoe is a telephone and believing they had a conversation with someone that called their shoe. Just like when dreaming, the abnormal and scientifically impossible perceptions are simply produced by our unconscious minds and are not symptomatic of mental illness. Okay? So, this story sounds difficult to believe, although with an understanding of how hypnosis works and the phenomena that hypnosis can produce, it's easy to understand how they were able to get me to believe what they did using hypnosis. The people that hypnotized me impersonated the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I was told that I was going to make a movie for the Make-A-Wish Foundation and that the Make-A-Wish Foundation was going to give me, quote, everything I wanted. I was told that they were going to hypnotize someone to commit suicide to prevent me from committing suicide. I was told that all I needed to do was ensure to buy him cigarettes and he wouldn't kill himself, but if he didn't have cigarettes, that he was going to think that the Mexican cartel was going to kill him. McKay Cody James discussed feelings of suicide and fears that the Mexican cartel was going to kill him before he killed himself. I found his body hanging from a tree while looking for a tree to hang myself on to commit suicide. This actually worked to prevent me from using the noose knot to commit suicide prior to finding his body, because I had to call the police and file a police report. When I first found his body, I didn't know I found a dead body and thought it was a Halloween decoration that was left hanging out from a tree. Of course, this was from a distance as well. I found a large branch and poked his stomach to see if his stomach decompressed. It didn't. It was actually very stiff, but when I got close enough, I smelled a strong odor and saw maggots crawling out of his face, which was blue and purple, completely unable to recognize his face. I checked his wallet for ID, which read McKay Cody James, and called the police after washing my hands. I returned to the camp after I finished talking to the police and discovered my friend who mysteriously disappeared one day, named Cody, actually introduced himself to me by his middle name because his full name was McKay Cody James. After discovering I didn't just poke a dead body with a stick, I poked my dead friend with a stick. I developed an eating disorder and PTSD from it. I was hypnotized to believe that my friend died because of a freak accident during the movie production instead of him being murdered with hypnosis. I was hypnotized to think it was my fault he committed suicide because I didn't buy him cigarettes, but at the time I didn't even know he was hypnotized, let alone hypnotized to commit suicide without cigarettes. Very similar type of situation to, like, say for example, believing a stunt double got hurt making a movie, and like that was the kind of concept that they introduced to me, like it was an accident in a movie and somebody got hurt or injured or actually killed. I was hypnotized to think it was my fault he committed suicide because I didn't buy him cigarettes, but at the time I didn't even know he was hypnotized, let alone hypnotized to commit suicide without cigarettes. Since I was already taking tranquilizer medication and frequently visited the emergency room, I was hypnotized to think the tranquilizer medication Klonopin meant it's not my fault, and that the tranquilizer medication Valium meant I didn't know. I was hypnotized to think any emergency room visit was a movie scene and that these medications were supposed to represent different movie scripts. That it's not my fault meant it's not my fault I wanted to kill him, and that I didn't know meant I didn't know he was hypnotized to commit suicide if I didn't buy him cigarettes. I was hypnotized to think Klonopin meant I was making movie scenes, and that Valium meant an emergency medical intervention for my movie. I was hypnotized to believe that hypnosis was inhibiting me because I didn't care enough about Cody in an attempt to abuse me for witnessing his murder without me knowing it. Since I sincerely cared about Cody, the post-hypnotic suggestion to believe otherwise was completely ineffective, which cued the post-hypnotic suggestion to think that I shouldn't think about my dead friend so much during my movie, because then people would find out that someone died making my movie for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. The people that hypnotized me also threatened me that for talking about my dead friend. I was threatened that they were going to use my innocence regarding the situation with my dead friend Cody to make Donald Trump seem innocent and frame me for it. I explained his involvement a little bit later, and in more further detail even later, in a different video. I was also hypnotized to think that my dead friend smelled fragrant before eating to keep me from eating. So, these are some various post-hypnotic suggestions that referred specifically to Billie Eilish. I was hypnotized to feel euphoria, pleasant feelings, which is what euphoria means, listening to Billie Eilish's music as a form of reward and positive reinforcement to get me to start listening to her music. I was hypnotized to think that I was hypnotized to listen to Billie Eilish because I liked Justin Bieber's music as part of the plot for my movie. I was hypnotized to think that as part of my contract with the Make-A-Wish Foundation that Billie Eilish was going to help me make a movie if Justin Bieber was my favorite artist. I was hypnotized to think that if Justin Bieber was my favorite artist, that me and Billie Eilish would be dating and physically intimate in my movie. I was also hypnotized to think that it was part of my contract that if Justin Bieber wasn't my favorite artist, that Billie Eilish couldn't be involved in my movie because it wouldn't look good for Justin Bieber's image if I didn't like Justin Bieber's music because I listened to Billie Eilish's music. I was hypnotized to think that if I liked Phineas, that it meant I would be like Billie Eilish's brother, implying that I was in the, quote, friend zone. I was hypnotized to think that Justin Bieber meant my friend McKay Cody James, who was murdered by being hypnotized to commit suicide, or represented that, specifically with his mustache. I was also, when he had his mustache, I was also hypnotized to think that Justin Bieber's song Intentions referenced my intentions regarding McKay Cody James' death. I was also hypnotized to think that I was hypnotized to listen to Billie Eilish's music as much as Kathleen Islin and Peter J. Islin loved each other for framing me for assault charges I didn't commit. I was hypnotized to think that Billie Eilish was dead or dying if I was going to put Kathleen Islin and Peter J. Islin in prison. I was hypnotized to think that I should listen to Billie Eilish's music if I was sick of being gaslighted, and hypnotized to think that I should listen to Phineas's music if I was sick of being financially exploited. I was also hypnotized to think I should listen to Billie Eilish's music if I was investigating a murder because she did a song for the James Bond movie, and to think her music in general had a James Bond theme. And there's some hypnotic metaphors and post-hypnotic suggestions referencing some songs. So this one's probably the most specific. This is referencing the Billie Eilish song, I Don't Want to Be You Anymore. When I was hypnotized, I was told that they were going to abuse me so much that I wasn't going to want to be myself anymore, so they were going to hypnotize me to act like I was someone else for my movie. And that they came up with the idea from the Billie Eilish song, I Don't Want to Be You Anymore. This was a hypnotic metaphor that was intended to reinforce the belief that I was making a movie and to confuse, entertain, and distract my conscious attention so that hypnotic commands could be elicited without being questioned or detected. This was most specifically done as a method of making me appear mentally ill by hypnotizing me to think that I was hypnotized to feel and act how my perpetrators would feel and act, as well as hypnotizing me to act angry when I, quote, ruined something they did to abuse me, because they were angry that I ruined that. This hypnotic metaphor made me feel as if I was taunting and mocking my perpetrators by being hypnotized to feel angry, and made me believe I was proving my point very well, when in all reality, the hypnotic metaphor confused me to the extent that I didn't even know this was only done to make me seem insane whenever I attempted to expose their criminal operation. Moving on, so this is referencing a song called Lo Vas a Olvidar. That's Spanish for You're Going to Forget It. And this is by Billie Eilish and Rosalia. I was hypnotized to think that listening to Rosalia meant I needed to be able to feel fear and didn't understand why. I played a song of hers randomly out of curiosity, and of course the lyrics were in Spanish. Since I didn't speak Spanish, I obviously didn't understand the lyrics and was cued to think, I don't understand, and to remember I started listening to Rosalia because she sang a song with Billie Eilish for the HBO series Euphoria. And since I was hypnotized to feel euphoria in order to force me to listen to her music, it implied that hypnotizing me to feel euphoria was comparable to listening to a song in Spanish because I wouldn't understand it. The euphoria and operant conditioning was a method of inhibiting my survival instincts. And also quickly referencing Christine Price being the hypnotherapist, who was a therapist that I was seeing just for therapy, not hypnotherapy, that hypnotized me. She kept telling me that a lot of the post-hypnotic suggestions and hypnotic commands meant you think it's a good thing, but it's not. And then moving on with post-hypnotic suggestions and metaphors relating to Billie Eilish's album called When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? I was hypnotized to think that Billie Eilish made this album for my movie and that the album was a reference to sleep deprivation and resulting medical malpractice cases because of the album title When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? I was also hypnotized to think it was a reference to developing PTSD from sleep deprivation because she is depicted on the album cover as visually similar to the Russian sleep experiment internet story depiction of the results of the experiment. So, the people in the experiment. I was hypnotized to think that the subjects. I was hypnotized to think that the album was also a reference to atheism, referencing the question, where do we go when we die? Then, Ocean Eyes, another song by Billie Eilish. I was hypnotized to think the song showed my innocence because I was just trying to make a viral YouTube video. I was also hypnotized to think the song meant they were going to dump Billie Eilish's body into the ocean to dispose of the evidence. I was also hypnotized to think the song meant my dog Jewel because she has two different colored eyes, even though in this context she technically have an ocean eye because one of them is moreover like colored like the ocean, the other one is brown. But regardless, the next one is Therefore I Am, and another hypnotic metaphor and song by Billie Eilish. Hypnotized to imagine the social worker from Jordan Valley Medical Center walking a fine line, and to imagine her putting one foot in front of the other as if she was walking a tightrope. I was hypnotized to think the fine line represented right and wrong because there is a fine line between right and wrong, and they're crossing it just like how you cross your T's. In handwriting, which is actually a reference to handwriting analysis, by the way, knowing that I would go that far. There were several unethical lines crossed, including hindering innocent people from receiving life-saving resources, threatening to kill Billie Eilish and my friends and family, and committing several murders, and that once they crossed one line, they crossed all of them. In fact, for these people, like a sociopath and a psychopath, typically, that line between right and wrong, those lines are like morality, they don't exist. They have no empathy, they have no regret, and they have no remorse. That's why they're often depicted as completely heartless, cold-blooded, and, your serial killers are also going to be sociopaths and psychopaths. And white-collar sociopaths, for example, that would be like, a business person that would, do anything to make money, no matter who got hurt. So, next one is No Time to Die. I was hypnotized to think a watch face, or a clock, right, meant no time to die because watches and clocks tell time. I was hypnotized to think a pocket watch meant murder with hypnosis because pocket watches have notoriously been used for hypnotic inductions, and since my friend McKay Cody James was murdered by being hypnotized to commit suicide, that it changed the meaning to no, time to die, implying no, it is actually time to die. So, this we're going to start with a little bit more complicated and intricate of a hypnotic metaphor. And a lot of these will loop together. And there's a lot more songs that had a lot of hypnotic metaphors and meanings that they told me. But, I explained that in detail and elsewhere. I'll post a link to the document. It's a Google Docs document. Anyways, when I was hypnotized, they referenced a Dane Cook joke about doing a, quote, B and E. which stood for breaking and entering. They said that they were going to do a B and E, but instead of breaking and entering, B and E was going to stand for a Billie and Eilish, which is why the B and E and the because acronym, they told me, stood for Billie Eilish. So, moving on from that, I will be getting to that here shortly. And in an attempt to demoralize me, I was threatened for looking up to Jesus Christ as a role model. I am an atheist, although from a scientific and historical perspective, I looked up to Jesus Christ as a role model and wanted to be like him because of his unconditional love and selflessness. I also looked up to George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Buddha, and Mahatma Gandhi for similar principles and values, but I was only specifically threatened for looking up to Jesus as a role model, likely because it could be used as a frightening example. Since I noticed a lot of problems in society that are frequently discussed but not properly resolved, I strive to find practical resolutions to these problems and apply them. I strive to rise above all the evil, greed, and corruption in the world so that I could help people and change the world. And I was threatened that by doing this, I would be like Jesus Christ because I would be acting like a, quote, savior by saving everyone from all the evil, greed, and corruption in the world. They threatened that they wanted history to repeat itself if I was behaving Christ-like because I could be like Jesus and, quote, die for their sins. This threat was an attempt to demoralize me by making me scared of looking up to Jesus Christ as a role model and behaving selflessly and morally. I was also hypnotized to think that if I tried to snitch, that the threat would reference Billie Eilish being Jesus dying for their sins, except the Spanish pronunciation Jesus, because they said they were going to use her as an example of what they would do to snitches, like how the Mexican cartel made examples of what they do to snitches by decapitating them using a chainsaw. I was also threatened that they were going to make me look bad for helping people and trying to do the right thing because they'd abused me so much I'd make helping people and doing the right thing seem scary, and that they were going to use Billie Eilish as an example of what they do to people for trying to preserve the environment. The because acronym stood for Billie Eilish, cartel, anyone useless snitches eventually. That's that one for you. And then this is a reference for All the Good Girls Go to Hell. I was hypnotized to think that the song All the Good Girls Go to Hell meant that they were going to make an example out of Billie Eilish for her political activism for environmental preservation by making her die for her sins like Jesus. I was hypnotized to imagine Billie being tied to a chair and decapitated with a chainsaw when I looked at her album cover with her sitting on the edge of the bed when I listened to the song All the Good Girls Go to Hell. I was also hypnotized to think All the Good Girls Go to Hell meant all the gaslighters go to hell, which we can also interpret all the gaslighters go to jail in a literal sense after I make gaslighting illegal with a petition I have. I'll actually include that in the link specifically. So, moving along. It's just an outline for the petition, by the way, so we'll of course have to elaborate on more details, but just basic concepts. After using a Wendy's restroom, this is regarding Billie Eilish, phone, post-hypnotic suggestions and metaphors, and Bill Gates. After using a Wendy's restaurant restroom, I was hypnotized to think that since I was planning to use the internet to help me make history, and that since Bill Gates made the internet, that Bill Gates wanted to look good in history, so that he was going to help to pay to keep Billie Eilish safe / alive for me under the condition that I married her. I was also hypnotized to think that it was my fault if she died for not marrying her, and that I should feel guilty because it would make her life seem insignificant if I thought she was so ugly that I wouldn't even marry her if her life literally depended on it. Since I was threatened that they were going to kill Billie Eilish, I was hypnotized to think that posting all the hypnotic metaphors and post-hypnotic suggestions on Facebook was a method of protecting her because it would be evidence I was threatened and told about it before it would happen. So then the people that threatened her would be able to get wouldn't be able to get away with hurting her. Anyways, I was hypnotized to think of a Billy Gates metaphor, because since Bill Gates created the internet, that if I used the internet to protect Billie Eilish and keep her safe, that it would be like Bill Gates was protecting Billie Eilish and keeping her safe. I'm going to repeat that one last part one more time. I was hypnotized to think that since I was threatened that they were going to kill Billie Eilish, I was hypnotized to think that posting all the hypnotic metaphors and post-hypnotic suggestions on Facebook was a method of protecting her, because it would be evidence I was threatened and told about it before it would happen, so then the people that threatened her wouldn't be able to get away with hurting her. I was also hypnotized to think of a Billy Gates metaphor, because since Bill Gates created the internet, that if I used the internet to protect Billie Eilish and keep her safe, that it would be like Bill Gates was protecting Billie Eilish and keeping her safe. I can also relate this a little bit differently to Justin Bieber. And it's very interesting, actually. So, how that turned out. I was hypnotized to think that if I didn't have internet access, that Bill Gates couldn't help protect Billie Eilish without the internet, because I couldn't use it. Since I used my phone to access the internet, I was hypnotized to think that if my phone died, it meant Billie Eilish died, and that if my phone was dying, that Billie Eilish was dying. Except I was hypnotized to not know that my phone was dying was the hypnotic cue to think Billie Eilish was dying. Since I listened to Billie Eilish's music on my phone, I was hypnotized to think that if my phone died, that she died, because if I couldn't listen to her music, then she was dead to me. I was hypnotized to think of using Facebook to keep Billie Eilish alive, being similar to when I posted on Facebook about doctors abusing me, when it happened to protect myself, and everything along those lines, because I wanted to publicize, what doctors were doing to me and how they were trying to get me admitted to the state mental hospital for medical malpractice. So then I was posting it on Facebook, so that, I couldn't just mysteriously disappear, and it would be on Facebook, where did Matt go? Check his Facebook. What just happened? That was the last thing he posted, right? I was also hypnotized to think he would offer to pay several $1 billion for ransoms, Bill Gates, because he wanted to look good in history. So moving on from that. Now the next one is, I'll just start reading it. I was hypnotized to think that Billie Eilish's political activism for environmental preservation was the primary reason she was given death threats, and I was hypnotized to think of a metaphorical comparison to Bill Nye the Science Guy, referring to them as Billie Nye the Science Guy and Billie Eilish, because of their political views regarding climate change. And then this one is about Warren Buffett. I was also hypnotized to distract attention from Donald Trump and redirect my attention to Warren Buffett. And I'll have to explain that later. Let's see here. I'll try to put that there and see if I can explain that later. If not, it might be in the next one. So this one is about Billie Eilish and the cartoon The Simpsons, and a hypnotic metaphor related to that. When I was hypnotized, I was also told that my friend named Delaney, wrote the Make-A-Wish Foundation for me, and that Donald Trump responded to the letter. They told me Donald Trump was a multi-billionaire and that he was going to make all my wishes come true and give me, quote, everything I wanted for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I was then told that the hypnosis was actually so that Donald Trump would get everything he wanted. The situation was compared to the cartoon The Simpsons, as if they were explaining it to a little kid by explaining it to me. They told me to imagine Mr. Burns, the owner of the power plant, wanting to get rid of the three-eyed fish that mutated from nuclear waste being illegally dumped in the local pond, and Mr. Burns wanting to keep the three-eyed fish off the news. Metaphorically speaking, in the situation, Donald Trump was Mr. Burns, I was the fish, and my hyperventilation syndrome was the fish's third eye mutation that Mr. Burns wanted to keep off the news. To clarify, the hyperventilation syndrome doesn't normally seem like anything that significant, but the hyperventilation syndrome was so severe that I easily could have broken the world record for hyperventilation syndrome. I was consistently hyperventilating for 3 hours at a time, straight, 3 times a day, every day for the first 9 months after it started, totaling 9 hours a day of hyperventilating. The hyperventilation syndrome was triggered by singular words and even triggered eventually just by certain colors, specifically the color red. I oftentimes was completely unable to leave my house and sometimes even my room for 1 to 2 days at a time. Whenever I did go in public, specifically grocery shopping, I would have people call ambulances on me and end up in the emergency room on a regular basis. I was also hypnotized to think the Make-A-Wish Foundation would give me everything I wanted but not everything I needed, because the Make-A-Wish Foundation could give a cancer patient what they wanted but not what they needed, like a cure for cancer. So that's what I was hypnotized to think the Billie Eilish song Everything I Wanted was about. I was hypnotized to think that the doctors would only give me Valium or Klonopin if I said I want Valium or I want Klonopin, and that if I said I needed it, that the doctors weren't going to give it to me. I was hypnotized to think the reasons the doctors wouldn't give me the medications if I said I needed it is because I would make the Make-A-Wish Foundation seem scary, because they wanted people to feel good for me since I got what I wanted, instead of people feeling bad for me because I needed my medications, and because they needed to cover up my PTSD symptoms and make it look like drug addiction, because no one wants to see a movie about someone needing medicine. In all reality, this was done so that I could be abused and deprived of what I needed, as well as to make it look like I didn't need my medications. I was also hypnotized to forget that Donald Trump was at all involved in the situation, and to think that it was all the rapper G-Eazy, until after I was framed for the assault charges that they intended to frame me for. I was then cued to think Donald Trump responded to a letter that my friend wrote for me to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Alright, and then I'm going to go ahead and, so there's a few different hypnotic metaphors that are going to be very specifically relevant. The first being quality over quantity, and then one called Charlie Sheen has AIDS, and then it's going to go over Valium and Klonopin specifically in the second part of this video. And I'll also be going over a lot of different things. So, moving on, I was told that every time I went grocery shopping or went out to eat that I was making commercials. I was told that Donald Trump had a contract with the Make-A-Wish Foundation where every dollar that I spent, Donald Trump had to spend $1 million to pay for the movie production and commercials. I was also told that COVID-19 was a zombie apocalypse theme for my movie, and that the COVID-19 stimulus bills were funding my movie production. The social worker that hypnotized me in Jordan Valley Medical Center financially exploited me by telling me that America's economy is based off products valuing quality over quantity, and that every product I'd buy would be sponsored by the company that made it, and that I needed to buy brand name products to advertise for them, which is obviously financial exploitation because brand name products are more expensive than generics, and it wasn't advertising anything. The social worker also told me that I had a Roche sponsorship, and that Roche was going to let me advertise Valium and Klonopin as high-quality pharmaceuticals in comparison to Xanax by Pfizer, which is FDA approved in stronger dosages and available in a larger quantity as a tranquilizer than Valium and Klonopin are FDA approved for. So Pfizer and Roche are both pharmaceutical companies. The social worker also told me that the cooks at Jordan Valley Medical Center really prided themselves on the quality of the food that they cooked, and that I was supposed to go back there and ask for Valium. The social worker told me that the sooner I went back to Jordan Valley Medical Center, that it meant the better their food was supposed to taste, and that their food was supposed to taste as good as I do, because all the girls want to eat me up. Get it? Kind of like a pun, a joke, metaphor. And these were used to, reinforce the belief that I was making a movie. So the better the food was, the better I was. I was also not supposed to mention Adderall in court, and I was told that if the judge asked about the Adderall, I was supposed to say Jordan Valley Medical Center has the best food in the world, guilty as charged, which was supposed to mean girls want to eat me up more than anyone else in the world, guilty as charged. The social worker at Jordan Valley Medical Center told me that Warren Buffett personally invested in hypnotic commands and hypnotizing me to prevent me from interfering with profits from his business, Berkshire Hathaway. And then just going over a very brief disclaimer, so about what I'm going to go discuss from the university. So the data regarding solar panel efficiency quoted Utah State University and is from the year 2013 is most likely outdated and discredited by a majority of the resources of information that are currently available and up to date. I was threatened for discussing concepts I learned in a college physics class at Utah State University regarding solar panel efficiency. Sorry about that. The hypnosis really inhibited me, so I'll say that one more time. I was threatened for discussing I'm going to say that again. I was threatened for discussing concepts I learned in a college physics class at Utah State University regarding solar panel efficiency. I was threatened not to talk about solar panel efficiency because the concept is that it requires more electricity from fossil fuels in order to manufacture a solar panel than the solar panel is able to produce in electricity in its lifetime. I was hypnotized to think that the reason Warren Buffett gave me death threats was because it made his multi-billion-dollar enterprise look like a joke, as if at Berkshire Hathaway they're all about quality over quantity, because it's not about how much electricity solar panels produce, it's about the quality of the electricity the solar panels produce. These hypnotic metaphors were the reason I messaged so many friends about Warren Buffett and posted about Warren Buffett on my Facebook as well. Let's see. I was also hypnotized to distract my attention from Donald Trump and redirect my attention to Warren Buffett with the multi-billionaire death threat metaphors, because Warren Buffett was one of the richest people on the planet and could pay a much larger ransom amount than Donald Trump would be able to. I was hypnotized to think that Warren Buffett would also pay several $billion for ransoms in exchange for a presidential exemption for any criminal activity that he was involved in. So I'll explain that in more detail and provide evidence of it in the next video. So, not saying that there's any concrete evidence that Warren Buffett was actually involved, by the way. So, acting performance. I was told that hypnosis was being used to control my bodily functions in order to improve my acting performance, such as suppressing cough reflex, mucus production, tear production, salivation, etc. Because they hypnotized me to think the movie was being recorded live, and that coughing could ruin a movie scene, for example, or suppressing my thirst and hunger while making movie scenes because they didn't want me to interrupt my movie scenes by getting food and water. In all reality, this was simply done to control me and prevent me from questioning the motives and ethics regarding why they hypnotized me. So, I'll also go ahead and quickly explain. One of the things that they did to me was they hypnotized me not to drink water unless I would notice I wasn't drinking enough water, unless someone else would notice I wasn't drinking enough water, or unless they would get caught for it. And I developed a medical condition called urinary incontinence as a result of that. So, I survived manslaughter from it. Now, moving on from that, I was also given a series of sexual threats towards my reproductive health and reproductive organs, that they were going to give me sexually transmitted diseases for being political. And this is about to get into Charlie Sheen has AIDS and hypnotic metaphors. So I was hypnotized to listen to Hollywood Undead, which is a musical group, when I was trying to move to California. And they were trying to stop me from leaving Logan so they could frame me. I was hypnotized to act like the Hollywood Undead member named Charlie Sheen and party recklessly to make the movie. And if I was medicating medical conditions, that I was supposed to be acting like Charlie Sheen because my acting was, quote, diseased, and that they threatened to break my legs if anyone found out. So I'm going to go ahead and elaborate in further detail on that. And moving on. So I began folding and rolling a raw cigarette filter to roll a joint. And it was a cue to think, no, Matt, don't do that. That lets it out. I felt confused, ignored the suggestion, and proceeded to finish rolling the crutch anyways. As I proceeded to finish rolling the crutch, I was cued to think, wait, Matt, Charlie Sheen has AIDS. To which I responded with even more confusion, thinking, what does that have to do with anything? And proceeded to attempt to finish rolling the crutch again. Next, I was cued to think, wait, Matt, Charlie Sheen has AIDS. Or in other words, if anyone finds out, he can hire big men to break your legs. And then I was also cued to think, wait, Matt, Charlie Sheen is affiliated with cartels or drug cartels, and thought logically about how Charlie Sheen is very notorious, or was very notorious before he got sober, for his cocaine use, and that he very possibly could obtain or could have obtained cocaine from the Mexican cartel, and could very possibly have connections to people who could break people's kneecaps or legs, because I recalled a memory of my mother telling me how my dad was hanging out with people who broke people's kneecaps, and this was a very similar analogy to a South Park episode where Jared, who used to advertise for Subway, admitted that it wasn't just Subway sandwiches that helped him lose weight, and that he actually got AIDS to help him lose weight, which implied that he meant the medical condition, but he actually had assistance. A fitness trainer and dietitian aided him to lose weight. As a method of manipulating my behavior, I was cued to think that Charlie Sheen was going to break my legs for acting scared and hyperventilating because of his AIDS, because it would make his sex life seem scary, as well as how acting scared and hyperventilating was bad acting for my movie, or that my acting was diseased. They also hypnotized me to think, so like with the Charlie Sheen and Charlie Sheen aspect, I was hypnotized to think that, to not know that, at the time, or to forget it at the time. So, anyways, they also hypnotized me to think that, if I acted scared of Charlie Sheen's AIDS, that it was like putting Charlie Sheen in a condom, because it would make girls scared of contracting AIDS from him, and that Charlie Sheen's AIDS were going to break my legs if I put him in a condom. I was hypnotized to think this was an attempt to help me improve my disease acting for my movie. I was hypnotized to think that G-Eazy was also threatening to break my legs if I made his music seem scary. And I was also hypnotized to think G-Eazy was a gangster while listening to the These Things Happen album, in an attempt to make him appear more scary and to deter me from listening to his music, because they wanted me to think that he was threatening me for listening to his music and being scared of him. I was hypnotized to think that if I didn't do drugs and party, that my sex life would be a comedy, and that if I didn't drink and do drugs for fun, or used alcohol or drugs to self-medicate my medical conditions, that my sex life would be a comedy, because nobody wants to see a movie about someone taking medicine for medical conditions. I was hypnotized to think that I had to drink at least one beer every day in public, or G-Eazy would break my legs. And then when I was in jail, they wouldn't give me my meds because they don't prescribe any controlled substances in jail. And I was hypnotized to think that if I didn't stop hyperventilating, start smiling, and holding my hands in a ball like this in front of the jail cell door, and look at the camera, that my legs were going to be broken without knowing what it meant or why, but did it anyways out of fear. This was used to treat my hyperventilation syndrome and PTSD, as well as prevent me from breaking my legs to get my medications while I was in jail, because if I broke my legs just to go to the hospital so that they could give me the medications I needed, it would have been inevitable for me to have a medical malpractice lawsuit against the jail, and that I would be, quote, breaking the jail by breaking my legs. Because the jail could even get shut down from the lawsuit if the news got out that they are denying necessary medical care to inmates in the jail, and they didn't want that to happen. So they used that as a therapy to treat my PTSD so that I couldn't get medical malpractice from it and shut down the jail. I also remember Christine Price told me that the doctors hoped that I would break my legs and become crippled like my dog did when I was experiencing catalepsy from sleep deprivation after being taken off my sleeping medication, Ambien. By the way, I was also hypnotized to think about the doctors and how I was supposed to specify that, the doctors that I had medical malpractice against. So when I said, I also remember Christine Price told me that the doctors hoped that I would break my legs, it was actually supposed to be, I also remember Christine Price told me that the doctors I had medical malpractice against hoped that I would break my legs. And become crippled like my dog. I was hypnotized to think about that, right? And to think about the medical malpractice, and hypnotized to smile to try to make me look sick for it. That's an example of, they also did the same thing when I would talk about murder, for example, and then I would be hypnotized to smile talking about the word murder, and to feel euphoria and to feel like I'm in a daze and zoning out. So that I wouldn't notice. So, moving on from that, I also remember Christine Price told me that the doctors hoped that I would break my legs and become crippled like my dog did when I was experiencing catalepsy from sleep deprivation after being taken off my sleeping medication, Ambien, because I was falling on her. I was hypnotized to hold my hands in a ball for 3 hours straight one day, and I didn't know why, but did it anyways. I was hypnotized to think the ball represented a benzo, and that I had to hold it for 3 hours straight because of how I used to hyperventilate for 3 hours at a time, as an example of how much I actually needed my medications. So this was the ball that I was hypnotized to hold, right? So and I was also hypnotized to think that this meant the world, and I had to elaborate more on the entire thing here. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing that. A benzo is a shortened term used to refer to a type of medication called a benzodiazepine, which is a type of tranquilizer. I was also hypnotized to think that holding my hands on a wall for 3 hours straight meant I was holding the world record for hyperventilation syndrome. This actually successfully treated my hyperventilation syndrome and PTSD because the fear of breaking my legs from the hyperventilation syndrome and PTSD overpowered the fear caused by my PTSD, using fear to overcome fear. I was hypnotized to hold my hands on a ball behind my head and to shake my hands as if shaking a snow globe because it was supposed to mean I was going to sue Intermountain Healthcare for medical malpractice, and that I was shaking the world up because I was shaking down the hospital for money. And to imagine an earthquake happening at the hospital that I would be shaking down in a lawsuit for money, and to imagine the hospital in a snow globe. I was also hypnotized to think, in regards to, so I was hypnotized to hold this for 3 hours, and it was supposed to represent, me holding a benzo, not even knowing, and that's the world record, right, for hyperventilation syndrome. And then this is me shaking it up because I didn't know what it meant, and that's why Valium meant I didn't know. That's interesting. Wow. See, I didn't even know that. I didn't know. Moving on, I'll be explained in even further detail. So, I was also hypnotized to think the ball represented a bird trapped in a bird cage, which was a metaphor for me being in a jail cell, and that putting the jail over my head was like putting the jail time over my head so that I wouldn't break my legs in jail for medications, which is why the ball was also supposed to be a benzo. The hypnotic metaphor also references the suggestions relating to quality over quantity, and the hypnotic drawing with little Billie climbing the mountain for healthcare and pleading no contest to get out of jail for Valium, and the message going right over little Billie's head. I explained that in further detail in the next video, so make sure to watch that. So, like these would be like the, say for example, the bars of a jail cell, my fingers, in a metaphorical sense, right? Or, like in a birdcage. So, people actually did ask me what I was doing when I was standing in front of the jail cell door, smiling, staring at the camera, and doing this for hours, literally. And I can't remember what I said. I think I said like, I'm making a movie, and he's like, no, you're not. I'm like you're crazy. Like, I think he's like trying to say like, Ben, you're like crazy, yo. And I'm like, dude, what are you talking about, yo? Like, everybody knows I'm making a movie. Like, you're crazy. Doesn't that sound horrible? Like, I think I only got asked like once or maybe twice. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, whatever. So, the hypnotic metaphor also references the suggestions relating to quality over quantity, and the I already talked about that. So I was hypnotized to think I needed to smile and look at the camera holding the ball in my hands because it was part of my movie, and the movie scenes were supposed to be like time-lapse videos or fast motion videos, similar to time-lapse videos of seasons changing, the sun rising and setting, or even weather changes on a weather radar over extended periods of time by speeding up the frame rate of the video by various multitudes. I was also hypnotized to think that holding my hands in a ball represented a snow globe because I was hypnotized to think of weather changes in a time-lapse video in order to imagine how the movie scenes I was making in the jail would look. And I was also hypnotized to think that as soon as I actually broke the news that my family, friends, and loved ones would actually be in danger, I was hypnotized to think that the news would be unsettling and would be shaking the world up as if the references to earthquake... hold on a second. So, that's not the part that I wanted to include. And would be... I was hypnotized to think the news would be unsettling and would be shaking the world up as if referencing an earthquake. So... I was hypnotized to think the unsettling news referenced unsettled medical malpractice lawsuits. I was also hypnotized to think that water rising meant Bear River Mental Health was flooded with phone calls about me, and that there would be waves of phone calls and medical malpractice cases like there are waves in the ocean, referencing the song Ocean Eyes by Billie Eilish because I was hypnotized to think the song meant my dog Jewel because she has two different colored eyes, and that the waves of phone calls and lawsuits would be about how the medical malpractice lawsuit was so blatantly cruel, abusive, and unethical that even my dog became injured from it. Another form of metaphor for Charlie Sheen has AIDS was that there are medications that can help with the medical condition AIDS. And since the medications are helpful, the medications are like AIDS for AIDS in that sense. My medications helped me. Charlie Sheen has AIDS meant I had AIDS since I had my medications. I was hypnotized to think that since AIDS were like a form of help, like hearing aids, in that sense, the hypnotic metaphor was used to help my PTSD and hyperventilation syndrome, that the hypnotist gave me aids using hypnosis because they helped me with my medical conditions. I was also hypnotized to think that Charlie Sheen has AIDS was a reference to how I believe that the meaning of life is to help people, and that the speech I wrote regarding oxytocin and the meaning of life was like an STD because it was a, quote, moral oral presentation, and to prevent my videos from going viral, they had to inhibit my ability to speak. I was also hypnotized to think that if I had any viral videos, they'd be like cancer to the doctors because the doctors would try to stop the videos from spreading. And I was hypnotized to think that suing doctors meant killing doctors. I was hypnotized to think holding my hands in a ball meant I had the world in my hands as if holding a globe, and to think that holding my hands in a ball was also a reference to how on the cartoon show The Simpsons, the character Mr. Burns would hold his hands together in a ball and say, "Excellent," at his desk. I was also hypnotized to think the world and Mr. Burns metaphor was a reference to Donald Trump feeling excellent for preventing me from becoming famous for breaking the world record for hyperventilation syndrome. I was also hypnotized to think that the world and Mr. Burns metaphor also referenced environmental preservation because I intended to make, apply, and enforce the actual changes necessary to preserve the environment and address the climate crisis, as well as because Mr. Burns was depicted as greedy, corrupt, evil, and illegal, and illegally dump. Sorry about that. Let me rephrase that. As well as because Mr. Burns was depicted as greedy, corrupt, evil, and illegally dumping nuclear waste from his nuclear power plant into local lakes and ponds. While I was hypnotized, I explained I wanted to rise above all the evil, greed, and corruption in the world so that I could save the world and help people, and that the way I would literally save the world was by preserving the environment, because that is the world. That's our planet. I also explained that due to limited fossil fuels and overconsumption of fossil fuels, that we are facing an inevitability of eventually needing to limit fossil fuel consumption, and that the earlier we started, the easier it would be for society in the future. Christine Price told me that all the evil, greedy, and corrupt politicians and business owners wanted to keep doing what they were doing, didn't care if what they were doing was harmful to the environment or not, because they were profiting off of it, and that they didn't want the profits from their businesses limited because of fossil fuel consumption limitations and restrictions. So they hypnotized me to stop me so that I wouldn't, so that they didn't have to. When I was hypnotized, I was given a series of different sexual threats, since death threats only encouraged me because I was suicidal. The sexual threats mostly pertained to giving me STDs, organ failure, loss of organ function, and various different threats towards my reproductive health. Since I was rather politically progressive and wanted to make changes to improve our government, society, and to improve our government and society, sorry about that. Since I was rather politically progressive and wanted to make changes to improve our government and society, I was told that Donald Trump was a Republican and didn't want to change anything, that he wanted everything to stay the same, and that since my reproductive organs were healthy, that my reproductive organs didn't need to change, and that the more I wanted to change the world, the more they were going to change my reproductive organs and make them unhealthy. I was told that since Ziggy Marley's music inspired me to change the world, that they coined the term for the Ziggy Marley song, Change Your World, because the more I wanted to change the world, the more they were going to change my world by changing my reproductive health. I was told that the Make-A-Wish Foundation was willing to help me make a movie to compensate for my PTSD and hyperventilation syndrome, as long as I didn't make a YouTube channel and as long as I didn't file a medical malpractice lawsuit, because the Make-A-Wish Foundation does a lot of charitable work for children with terminally ill medical conditions. So I was told that they needed to make me look mentally ill so that the public wouldn't find out my hyperventilation syndrome was caused by PTSD, abuse, and medical malpractice, so that the message would go right over little Billie's head, or little kids' heads, and children wouldn't be scared of doctors and hospitals. I was told I was supposed to act bipolar, party, do a lot of drugs, and spend a lot of money very quickly to cover up my hyperventilation syndrome. I was threatened for making a YouTube channel, needing my medications, acting scared, hyperventilating, or letting anyone find out I was being abused. I was threatened that the scarier I made the doctors and hospitals seem, the scarier I made the Make-A-Wish Foundation seem. I was threatened that the scarier I made the Make-A-Wish Foundation seem, the scarier they were going to make my sex life seem, and I was given a series of threats towards my reproductive health, which were mostly threats to give me sexually transmitted diseases for hyperventilating and acting scared. When I was hypnotized, they organized for me to meet certain people in certain places so that I could be unknowingly and involuntarily forced to contract 4 different sexually transmitted infections without being sexually active and repressing my memory of it. I contracted all 4 sexually transmitted infections in a matter of only a few months. The first sexually transmitted infection I contracted was a rare strain of human papillomavirus, which is a form of warts on the back of my hands. From shaking hands with a specific person they organized me to meet. The second sexually transmitted infection I contracted was gonorrhea from a motel room they organized me to stay in afterwards. The third sexually transmitted infection I contracted was syphilis, which I believe I contracted after meeting someone they organized me to meet in Colorado. He gave me some Xanax for my hyperventilation syndrome symptoms and began repeatedly asking me to take off my pants throughout the night. The Xanax made me fall asleep in his car, and the next day I went to an urgent care clinic to get checked for a red bump that suddenly appeared on my skin. The last sexually transmitted infection I contracted was MRSA, also known as a staph infection, which could have been premeditated using a variety of different methods. And I just wanted to also include here that so I contracted the gonorrhea from the motel room, and then I was hypnotized to think that the Xanax and the let me see, it was the syphilis, was specifically the syphilis, that I was hypnotized to think, like in my movie and everything, that I needed to get the gonorrhea treated before it got too severe or too late in the stage. So then they organized for this guy to take my pants off while I was asleep, so that I would have a red bump appear on my skin and force me to go to the urgent care, because what they didn't want me to mention was how the PTSD from the hyperventilation syndrome and the PTSD from being abused by doctors and from medical malpractice was deterring me from going to the emergency room, because I almost died from going to the emergency room twice within the same week due to blatantly negligent medical care. So, let's see. I was made to believe I was hypnotized to repress certain biological functions to improve my acting performance, which I already mentioned, so that I wouldn't question the changes in my biological functions. An example of this was instilling the belief that my senses of thirst and hunger were being repressed so that I wouldn't interrupt my movie scenes to get food or water. I was hypnotized not to drink water unless I noticed I wasn't drinking enough water, unless someone else noticed I wasn't drinking enough water, or unless they would get caught for it. I developed a condition called urinary incontinence, which is a loss of bladder function that developed as a result of being hypnotized to not drink water. The urinary incontinence impaired my reproductive health and sexual health as a method of instilling fear and intimidation to reduce resistance to post-hypnotic suggestions. I was also given various other threats towards my reproductive health and sexual health. So just like the Charlie Sheen has AIDS, post-hypnotic suggestions, that was used so that I would be afraid and to force me to feel like I needed to comply. I was hypnotized to increase the frequency I smoked cigarettes. I was also given various other threats towards my reproductive and sexual health. I was hypnotized to increase the frequency I smoked cigarettes, and I was told that my mucosal production and cough reflex were being repressed from my movie production. I was made to believe that the repressed mucosal production and cough reflex increased my risk of developing lung cancer and lung disease. I used to suffer from very severe smoker's cough, and even though the frequency of my smoking only increased, up until earlier this year, actually, I quit smoking, the hypnosis completely eliminated the symptoms and raised more concerns for my health. Because, it's just like gone, but like I didn't stop smoking or slow down. until like, I want to say this was, March of this year? Maybe February? Anyways, and I quit smoking because I noticed that the hypnosis was using smoking to abuse me. Basically, because I was hypnotized to increase my the urge to smoke cigarettes and the urge for nicotine with hypnosis, and I noticed that the cigarette cravings weren't even being caused by withdrawal. It was just being caused by hypnosis. Because literally, I remember I was writing about some of this stuff, and I was feeling nauseated, so I put out my cigarette half smoked, right? Felt like I had too much nicotine, put it out, and then I was supposed to the hypnosis was intended to try to make me take a break at that point and to stop working, but I kept working anyways. I went right back to it, and then as soon as I went right back to working, I was all of a sudden hypnotized to feel no nausea and to feel a sudden intense urge to smoke a cigarette, and like in less than 60 seconds, literally. So I mean, I went from too much nicotine, excessive nicotine consumption, to nicotine cravings and withdrawals, and that doesn't make sense. In the normal circumstances, but considering the hypnosis being used to abuse and torture me, it made sense. So then I quit smoking just because of that. It was being used as a method of controlling me and distracting me and abusing me. Let's see. I used to suffer, I was told that the hospitals and doctors were going to lie to me about any medical conditions I developed as part of the contract for the movie production. I was hypnotized to think the medication Klonopin meant I was making movie scenes, and that the medication value meant an emergency medical intermission for my movie so that I could get actual medical care. But I was hypnotized to not know what they were supposed to mean. I was hypnotized to feel back pain in the small of my back in between my shoulder blades, and severe muscle tension on the right side of my back underneath my shoulder blade, so that I'd have to crack my back frequently for relief. I was told that they did this to me because they wanted me to develop back problems, impairing my sexual performance and making sexual intercourse seem painful, which is why I was hypnotized to think you can't be sexy for it whenever I tried to crack my back, because I would have to like push my chest out to do it, and it just wouldn't exactly look very charming necessarily. Whenever I tried to to finish that, which is why I was hypnotized to think you can't be sexy for it whenever I tried to crack my back. The Charlie Sheen has AIDS hypnotic metaphor was another threat towards my sexual and reproductive health. I was hypnotized to think that if I jumped off a flight of stairs in jail for medications, that I might not only break my legs, but that I could actually fracture my spinal cord as well, and that I could become paralyzed from the waist down as a result, which would not only mean I would never be able to walk again, but that I would never be able to hump again either. I was also hypnotized to think about taking my dog on a walk when I thought about never being able to walk again if I jumped off a flight of stairs, which is further evidence that Christine Price told me that the doctors hoped that I would break my legs and become crippled like my dog did when I experienced catalepsy from sleep deprivation after being taken off my sleeping medication, Ambien. And I was hypnotized to think about taking my dog on a walk, because I wouldn't even be able to take my dogs out on a walk ever again if I became paralyzed from the waist down. Let's see. Since I was hypnotized to think that holding my hands in a ball meant that I had the world in my hands, I was also hypnotized to think it was a reference to Billie Eilish's documentary, The World's a Little Blurry, because the world, right, it would be this, would be from a security camera that would be way across the entire block, of the room, right? So you'd see like from a very large distance, right? So the world, right, like me holding my hands in the ball, this would be blurry in the jail security camera footage. So I was also hypnotized to think presenting the security footage from the jail as evidence in court meant the world's a little blurry too, and Stanford County Prison Experiment 2 and MK Ultra 2, because it would be like a sequel to the three different the two different documentaries and then the experiment. I was also hypnotized to think Billie Eilish's documentary, The World's a Little Blurry, was a reference to my dog's cataracts, because when my dog would go outside, the world would be a little blurry. Sorry about that. The world would be a little blurry because her vision was blurry. Since she had cataracts. I was also hypnotized to think Charlie Sheen has AIDS meant Charlie Sheen has dogs, because my dogs helped me with my hyperventilation syndrome and PTSD symptoms, and because my dogs were referenced multiple times in the hypnotic metaphors. So, anyways, there's that, and then we're almost done with this video. I was hypnotized to remember a time when I was told by a Catholic woman that some people actually believe that ADHD isn't real, and that it was a type of demonic possession because amphetamine medications would have paradoxical effects on ADHD patients and calm them down. When I was hypnotized, I was told that they were going to help me improve my handwriting with hypnosis because I had very messy and sloppy handwriting since I have ADHD, and I was told that the reason they helped me improve my handwriting was because if I was going to be the president, that they just can't have a president with sloppy handwriting. I was hypnotized to because like they sign bills and how the Constitution was written and all that kind of stuff. Sloppy signatures, just kind of like, come on, right? I was hypnotized to think that analyzing handwriting was, quote, worshipping the devil, end quote, because I learned to analyze handwriting from being hypnotized to improve my handwriting because I had ADHD. So if I was analyzing handwriting, it was because I have ADHD, and since ADHD is the devil, then analyzing handwriting was, quote, worshipping the devil, end quote. I was hypnotized to think of a pitchfork when I wrote a capital letter Y, and that if I was analyzing my handwriting changes, that it was a devil's pitchfork. I was also hypnotized to think that when I was hypnotized to draw on the walls of the jail, that it also meant I was worshipping the devil. The handwriting and drawings were how I identified John Matthew Hurl was hypnotized when he wrote the death threat letters, and since I was hypnotized to think that analyzing his handwriting and drawings meant I was worshipping the devil, that everything I would be able to do to investigate the death threat letters was, quote, worshipping the devil. I was hypnotized to think that writing with a pencil wasn't classy, and that writing with a ballpoint pen was classy, and to imagine when I was writing with a ballpoint pen how founding fathers wrote with a feather dipped in ink, because I was going to make history and become the president. How the founding fathers wrote with a feather dipped in ink. So, moving on from that, Christine Price rephrased that signing the contract with G-Eazy and Donald Trump and the Make-A-Wish Foundation, making a movie, and letting Donald Trump run the country for me was like a little, quote, deal with the devil, end quote. Christine Price also told me that Donald Trump came up with the idea for Marlboro Cigarette Company to buy cannabis for cannabis cigarettes from the Mexican cartel after cannabis was legalized. Christine Price also told me that Donald Trump made a deal with Marlboro Cigarette Company that Marlboro was going to pay me to advertise their cigarettes by smoking their cigarettes during my movie, and that Donald Trump was supposed to be my devil's advocate for doing it. I was told that since Donald Trump did this, that I wouldn't have to be scared of violent retaliation from the Mexican cartel for legalizing cannabis, because the Mexican cartel could actually legally profit from cannabis legalization instead of losing tremendous amounts of profit. I was told that devil's advocate meant doing something immoral but doing it anyways, because it wasn't that bad. I was hypnotized to think devil's advocate often when I took my first drag off a cigarette, without knowing that taking my first drag off a cigarette was what cued the thought, and what devil's advocate was even supposed to mean. I was also told that Marlboro Cigarette Company had a contract that would protect me from contracting sexually transmitted diseases during the movie, as long as I smoked their cigarettes during my movie. I was also hypnotized to think that devil's advocate meant I can get laid again. Since the actor Will Smith was actually offered a lot of money from cigarette companies to smoke cigarettes in his movies, but did the moral thing and refused to set a bad example for children by smoking in his movies, this was used as an example for why Donald Trump would be playing devil's advocate for me to smoke in my movie, because it was immoral, but that I should do it anyways because it wasn't that bad. Devil's advocate was a hypnotic metaphor used to attempt to demoralize me by conditioning me to believe that being moral and doing the right thing was the wrong thing to do, because I would contract sexually transmitted diseases from it. But if I acted immorally, that I would be able to get laid again. This was also a method of keeping me addicted to cigarettes and financial exploitation, as well as because Marlboro cigarettes were expensive. And Republicans. They told me that since Donald Trump was Republican and doesn't want to change anything, that as long as I was a Republican and let Donald Trump run the country for me, that I could have sex again. They told me metaphors while I was hypnotized that pertained to the syllables that comprise the word Republican. I was hypnotized to think of an Irish pub because of the syllable pub in the word Republican, and to think that it meant I could drink alcohol and it's not a big deal. I was hypnotized to think that the syllables lickin' in the word Republican meant lickin' or licking, and was a reference to oral sex, like licking a lollipop. I was hypnotized to think that the syllable re in the word Republican meant as long as I could, sorry about that. I was hypnotized to think the syllable re in the word Republican meant I could do these things repetitively as long as I let Donald Trump run the country for me, and I was a Republican because I could go to a pub and get a lickin' over and over again. This was a hypnotic metaphor threatening me that referenced being hypnotized to not drink water and developing urinary incontinence, and an attempt to deter me from lobbying for political reform. So, these are things that, you would think, okay, they're like not necessarily that, not like that bad, right? I mean, drinking alcohol is like unhealthy, and of course, oral sex is not, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But, as long as you're safe about it, and of course, there's some moral and ethical aspects of how it should be done according to some religious beliefs as well. Say for example, including marriage and everything along those lines. But basically, things that weren't necessarily that bad that I could just enjoy, right? Like having drinking alcohol. Well, drinking alcohol is really bad for urinary incontinence, and it can worsen it. And then urinary incontinence also impairs sexual health, and would basically make the experience unpleasant or more difficult than normal. So that's what that was a reference to. And then red devils. I was hypnotized to think that red devils were Republicans because Republicans Sorry about that. I was hypnotized to think that red devils were Republicans because Republicans were represented by the color red, and because they'd advocate for me to behave immorally as long as I was... sorry about that. I'm being tortured and abused with hypnosis. I'll read that again. I was hypnotized to think that red devils were Republicans because Republicans were represented by the color red, and because they'd advocate for me to behave immorally as long as I was Republican, as if they were playing devil's advocate. I was also hypnotized to think that Republicans were like red devils because they were, quote, horny. Democrats. I was hypnotized to... and by the way, so when I was reading about that red devils thing, I noticed I made an unusual facial expression and I was having the difficulty speaking. And the difficulty speaking was used to distract my conscious attention from my facial expressions. Democrats. I was hypnotized to think that they were going to force me to involuntarily contract sexually transmitted diseases if I was a Democrat. I was hypnotized to think that the more I wanted to change the world, the more they were going to change my reproductive health and reproductive organs, making me unhealthy. I was hypnotized to think that this was a reference to a Ziggy Marley song called Change Your World, and a reference to the Obama campaign slogan, quote, change, end quote. I was also hypnotized to think if I was a Democrat that my sex life would be like a video game demo because I could try being a Democrat, but after I try it I might not like it because my sex life would only be a demo. Kind of a metaphor for, I could try it but I'm not going to be able to enjoy it, or I did the whole thing. Now moving on. One of the methods used to deter me from articulating speech was by hypnotizing me to feel back pain every time I attempted to speak clearly and fluently without excessive pauses, breaks, interruptions in my speech as a method of punishing me for trying to. I was also hypnotized to feel back pain to conceal hypnotic commands of rigid movements, forceful and strenuous speech, and abnormal facial expressions. I was hypnotized to associate attempting to overcome the hypnotic speech impairment with the figure of speech rolling off my tongue because I was trying to force my speech to roll off my tongue. The figure of speech is a metaphor for words sounding well articulated like a ball rolling smoothly off your tongue. I was also hypnotized to spin my arms in a circle, which was supposed to mean they were inhibiting my speech, and to think it meant rolling with the punches because I couldn't speak normally with the words rolling off my tongue. I was also hypnotized to think rolling up with the punches meant Justin Bieber was beating me up about it, referring to Justin Bieber beating up G-Eazy for giving me STDs, for diseasing G-Eazy's career by not liking G-Eazy's music enough during my movie, and referring to Justin Bieber beating up the social worker at Jordan Valley Medical Center for abusing me with hypnosis, and the I don't want to be you anymore hypnotic metaphor was used to add confusion with a tangential embedded loop because since they were going to abuse me so much with hypnosis that I wouldn't want to be myself anymore, so they hypnotized me to act like I was them instead of myself, and so that I could understand why it was phrased as Justin Bieber was beating me up about it without other people understanding it meant Justin Bieber was beating them up about it, because I was hypnotized to act like them. So I was also hypnotized to think rolling with the punches meant I was fighting the hypnosis and Justin Bieber was beating me up about it. And I was hypnotized to do this, right? Anyways, so fighting the so I was hypnotized to think rolling with the punches meant I was fighting the hypnosis by trying to articulate my speech, and I was hypnotized to and fighting for my rights. And hypnotized to imagine punching a speed bag, which is a small punching bag that is used by spinning arms in a circle to punch the bag. So, like when you see people doing that training, like, I think you see that in some of the Rocky movies, for example. Anyways, I was also hypnotized to think rolling off my tongue and rolling with the punches meant it was like I was doing ecstasy, because the slang term for ecstasy is rolling. The drug MDMA, or ecstasy, has been researched for marital counseling due to the drug's ability to promote feelings of empathy and understanding, which can also be described as providing a missing connection between couples that can help save marriages. I was hypnotized to think having the ability to speak with the words rolling off my tongue was like ecstasy, because people would be able to understand me and have empathy for me, and they didn't want people to be able to understand me or have empathy for me because they were abusing me. I was also hypnotized to think the feelings of connection caused by ecstasy referenced how the embedded loops of metaphors need to be connected to be understood. So when I would say I was hypnotized to think ... it would typically be an incomplete hypnotic metaphor and an embedded loop of metaphors. People would also commonly assume I was insane because the metaphors are not literal. The metaphors are symbolic, and the metaphors are commonly embedded in loops, as well as the hypnosis inhibiting my ability to speak, resulting in my descriptions of the metaphors seeming illogical. For example, I'd be consciously entertained and distracted from the visualizations they associate with the metaphors, like imagining a punching bag, so that hypnotic commands like spinning my arms in a circle walking down the street, or that Justin Bieber was fighting for me, and anyways, so that I wouldn't question those, right? So that I wouldn't question the hypnotic commands like spinning my arms in a circle, walking down the street, or that Justin Bieber was fighting for me. And by fighting for my rights, that's also, First Amendment right is freedom of speech in the United States. So they violated my constitutional rights. So, like imagining a punching bag, so that I wouldn't question, because I was hypnotized to exclude that part. So I'm writing it down. And then explaining embedded loops of metaphors can be extremely difficult, resulting in me talking in circles, attempting to explain it quickly, especially with the hypnotic speech impairment. So it's not like I could make a 1 to 10 minute video and successfully explain the embedded loops of metaphors. For example, if I'm explaining an embedded loop with 30 different metaphors, I'd have to explain each metaphor in 2 seconds or less in order to make a 1 minute video. Democrat. I was hypnotized to think Democrat meant democrac or domocrac, because the rigid, intense muscle movements concealed by being hypnotized to feel back pain were comparable to robotic movements or the dance The Robot. I was also hypnotized to think that breaking my back meant inhibiting my speech. I was hypnotized to think Democrat meant demograph, because they tried to limit the demographics my videos would be reaching to prevent public exposure of torture, abuse, and organized crime by making the content inappropriate and graphic to prevent children from watching. Hypnotized to imagine spine, or my spine, as a row of nuts tied on a string and cracking them when I cracked my back, or like a firecracker when I cracked my back. Firecrackers are explosives tied together on a string, and firecrackers will crack each other, each explosive, in a successive order. Hypnotized to imagine embedded loop metaphors or nested loop metaphors as a series of hypnotic metaphors tied together on a string like a firecracker. At first I looked nuts explaining the embedded loop metaphors they used until the embedded loop metaphors are connected and they become mind-blowing. Mind-blowing can be a hypnotic metaphor to firecrackers because comprehending the embedded loops of metaphors is explosively mind-blowing. Hypnotized to write small, illegible, rewrite, and frequently erase, to conceal hypnotic commands to squint while reading because the squinting would cause bags to develop under my eyes as a method of making me appear sleep-deprived when I wasn't. I was hypnotized to think that the vertebrae in my spine were like morals because they were like uneven orbs. I was hypnotized to think of the orbs as pearls and orals because they were inhibiting my speech. I was also hypnotized to associate the metaphor with my dog Jewel because they hit me in my jewels by harming my reproductive health. To loop the hypnotic metaphors back together like a loop in a bow, like when you tie a bow. Pearls are valuable jewels and metaphorically could be considered values. Looping back to morals because morals are values, which is why they told me they were going to inhibit my, quote, moral oral. The values could also relate back to the quality over quantity hypnotic metaphor because as a form of financial exploitation, I was hypnotized to buy brand name products to get our country out of debt because it added value to American-made products because we value quality over quantity. I was also hypnotized to think of when I was hypnotized I was also hypnotized to think of when I was hypnotized to think. Several people were taken hostage. And this related back to the death threats because it was about the quality of the hostages over the quantity of the hostages. I was hypnotized to think the vertebrae in my spine were like morals because they were my family and friends, or like my family jewels because they were valuable. I was also hypnotized to think of pearls because one of my dog's eyes is a bluish white which resembles a pearl and is the reason my dog is named Jewel. Inside my mind was a black box that kept something special that I value, like a treasure chest that I kept my treasures or morals and values safe in that was repressed from my memory until now. The black box was an unconscious symbol to a secret and a mystery. Cracking my back or cracking a chestnut open was a metaphor for cracking the treasure chest open. Upon cracking the treasure chest open, I found some valuable treasures or family jewels. I found my family and friends, and death threats to my family and friends, my loved ones. The reason I was hypnotized to crack the small of my back, which is the part of my spinal cord located directly in the middle, horizontally and vertically, and in between the shoulder blades, the reason I was hypnotized to crack the small of my back, which is the part of the spinal cord located directly in the middle, horizontally and vertically, and in between the shoulder blades, is in order to crack the small of my back, I had to squeeze my shoulder blades together and extend my chest forward, which was like cracking my chestnuts open because I had to push my chest out to crack it. So I'm going to go ahead and just demonstrate. It's like doing that, right? So then this motion would crack my back or my spine right in the middle of my shoulder blades. So you can see where I'm pushing my chest out, right? And, it almost kind of would also look like a posture would be a duck-like, right? So anyways, that's the video. Remember, there's going to be part 2 of this video too. So this was, Billie Eilish and Post-Hypnotic Suggestions, part 1. So thanks for watching the video. Have a great day.
My name is Matthew Jester, and this video is Billie Eilish and Post-Hypnotic Suggestions, part 2 of 2. So I have a certificate of completion just showing that I'm certified and competent in the field of hypnosis. This is from Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy. And I'm going to start with my general introduction. Please watch my video, Hypnosis, Abuse, and Speech Inhibition. I will leave a link to watch the video in the description. I will also leave additional links in the description of other relevant videos. I've been tortured and abused with hypnosis, and my ability to speak is being inhibited with hypnosis, which is why I have to read everything when I make videos. If you notice me stuttering, speaking slowly, being unable to speak clearly, or any other difficulty speaking, I explain in detail the specific methods and techniques that are being used to inhibit my ability to speak in my video, Hypnosis, Abuse, and Speech Inhibition. These issues speak and occur consistently in each of my videos, specifically within the first 3 minutes. The hypnosis inhibiting my ability to speak is often very noticeable throughout my videos, and I will leave a list of the various hypnotic commands that are specifically being used to inhibit my ability to speak that can be recognized in my body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, and speech patterns in the description. In this video, I'm going to be presenting evidence of what I discussed in the last video, Billie Eilish and Post-Hypnotic Suggestions, part 1 of 2. Please make sure to watch part 1 of 2 before watching this video, or else the video will not make any sense. I will also leave a link to watch Billie Eilish and Post-Hypnotic Suggestions, part 1 of 2 in the description. So, when I was hypnotized in Jordan Valley Medical Center's emergency room, the social worker told me that Billie Eilish's name meant something. The social worker told me that Billie meant billionaire because you can't pronounce billionaire without Billie, and that Eilish meant I wish because they rhyme. I was also hypnotized to draw a star that looked like it had one arm raised that was shooting a beam of light out of the raised arm, and to write Make-A-Wish over the beam of light, and to think it was the Make-A-Wish Foundation's logo. So, as you can see right there, I was also hypnotized to draw the same star shooting a beam of light out of its hand and to write everything I wanted on top of the beam of light because the Make-A-Wish Foundation was supposed to make everything I wanted come true, as you can see right there. So, I was also hypnotized to think of the old NBC public service announcement, the More You Know logo. The social worker also told me that they got the idea from the Mountain Star Hospital logo. I was also hypnotized to think Eilish meant eyelash because they sound similar, and to think that eyelash meant eyelash, the homonym, meaning eyelash like with a ruler, for example, and to think it was a reference to my grandfather telling me that he was ambidextrous and able to write with his left and right hand, because teachers used to lash students who wrote with their left hand with a ruler to get students to write with their right hand. I was hypnotized to think that the reference to my grandfather being taught to write with his right hand was a reference to how I was taught to change the letter formation in my handwriting. Since I was taught to change the letter formation in my handwriting, I naturally was curious if I could find or learn anything interesting in the handwriting and the death threat letters, and discovered various similarities and patterns caused by hypnosis in my handwriting that were also in his handwriting, which was how the series of metaphors related the name Eilish with FBI handwriting analysis. I was also hypnotized to draw an eye to symbolize the I in FBI, and I was hypnotized to draw an eyelash on the eye because Eilish is pronounced very similarly to eyelash. So here is one example of what that would look like. And then Facebook history investigation, or Federal Bureau of Investigation. So when I was hypnotized, a social worker tried to hypnotize me to think that death threats were funny and tried to hypnotize me to brag about getting multi-billionaire death threats, because I must have been doing something very impressive to get multi-billionaire death threats. I was hypnotized to think death threats were funny since threatening to kill a suicidal person could literally be laughable, because it could actually encourage a suicidal person to do what they were threatened for doing if they wanted to die, which is why they threatened to torture me and kill my friends and family. The emphasis was put on multi-billionaire death threats because I was hypnotized to think that some multi-billionaires were willing to pay for multi-billion-dollar ransoms in exchange for a presidential exemption for criminal activity they were involved in. I was hypnotized to think everything I wanted was a reference to how they told me that I was going to be able to go on NBC and talk about everything I wanted politically. I was also hypnotized to think that in a hostage situation, everything I wanted meant that as long as I gave the captors everything they wanted for a ransom, that I would get everything I wanted in return, and everyone would get everything they wanted in the situation. I was hypnotized to think that since I was threatened that they were going to kill Billie Eilish, that I could post all the hypnotic metaphors and post-hypnotic suggestions on Facebook as a method of protecting her, because it would be evidence I was threatened and told about it before it happened, so then the people that threatened her wouldn't be able to get away with hurting her. I was hypnotized to think Billie Eilish was going to be murdered if I didn't go on Facebook Live and make a video every time I attempted to organize any evidence I had. Whenever I attempted to write and organize the post-hypnotic suggestions and hypnotic metaphors they told me so that I could try to explain them, I was hypnotized to think Billie Eilish and several other celebrities were taken hostage a few days before the court day I had late in April 2021 for the assault charges I was framed for, and to think that they were threatening to kill hostages if I didn't go on Facebook Live, and make a video every time I tried to prepare for a video to explain the situation rationally and logically. Every time I was about to fall asleep so that I would become sleep deprived. Every time I tried to take care of my personal hygiene so that I would look unpresentable when I made videos. And whenever I attempted to prepare for court so that I would miss court and have a warrant put out for my arrest to prevent me from withdrawing my plea and going to trial. In fact, I even called the courthouse before court and left a voicemail for someone named Angie, who was responsible for rescheduling court dates, and told her that I was dealing with a hostage situation and couldn't make it to court. She never returned my phone call or responded to my voicemail, and about 2 weeks later, a warrant was issued for my arrest. Let's see here. And by the way, I was also framed for those assault charges. I don't know if that was mentioned in here. So I don't see it. But yeah, anyways, that's the situation there. That's one of the reasons that they hypnotized me, was to try to frame me. So because that's the method that they use to try to control me. Now, moving on here. We'll go ahead and move that out of the way, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. So, these Instagram photos all had certain hypnotic cues. So, the first one, sorry, my camera should be able to focus on the picture, but it's not right now. It is very blurry. I could try to turn down the brightness. Okay. Anyways, so as you can see here, this one was the first one. I'm going to do these in chronological order by date. So as you can see the G on the side of the shirt or sweater, I was hypnotized to think the G meant G-Easy. Let's see, so the next one was I was hypnotized to think that this one was a mugshot picture. And I was hypnotized to think it meant she got death threats because of me, and to think it referenced a jail mugshot. Let's see, next one. Okay, so with this one, I was hypnotized to think that I have 1 week to figure it out. Hypnotized to imagine Peter J. Island saying, "My neck is on the line," for him not to figure it out. And hypnotized to think of the Mexican cartel. And the reason for that is because her chin is raised, exposing her neck. And she also has the necklaces around her neck. And, I was also hypnotized to think of the song Hostage, which references a chain around someone's neck. So, anyways. Next one, this one, it, looks almost like a tired picture. Hypnotized to imagine her thinking or telling me, "I can't believe I got death threats because of you, and you are hypnotized, aren't you?" Kind of like a "I don't know what I got myself into" type of situation. This one, give me just a moment. So I was hypnotized to think this picture meant she was being held hostage, and to think that the straps were symbolic of being tied up. Because as you can see here, there are straps on her pants when it focuses. So, as you can see. Anyways, let's see now. Next one was the blue striped shirt. And I was hypnotized to think this referenced how the hypnosis was detrimental to my health. Oh wait, no, sorry about that. I was hypnotized to think of medical malpractice in Hawaii, just because, for whatever reason, I was hypnotized to think of a Hawaiian shirt as well. Let's see, so then the next one, this one you can see the caption, "You look half dead half the time." And I was hypnotized to think this referenced how the hypnosis was detrimental to my health, like, for example, how I was hypnotized not to drink water. Next one is the red hotel room. I was hypnotized to think of Donald Trump and to think that the red room meant red rum. And I was hypnotized to think it meant I could kiss her goodbye. Like not, like kiss her literally, but like kiss her goodbye as in, she's going to die. And then, let's see, this picture, same picture, or, same shirt at least. And I was hypnotized to think the G emblem still meant G-Easy. And anyways, moving on from that, let's see, next up. Alright, and then these are some more hypnotic cues. So we'll go ahead and get started with this one. And you can see this one was on her Instagram, and crying at Coachella 2 years ago today, LMAO. And this was on her Instagram story, by the way. I was cued to think that Billie Eilish died after I saw a specific picture of her crying on Instagram that was taken 2 years prior to that date, and to think it meant since she died, her Instagram page was a memorial, and to think, are you happy? That's how she went down in history. In the second picture, you can see I commented about crying for 3 to 4 hours because I thought she was murdered as evidence. The picture cued the thought that she was murdered. So, I legitimately believe she died, and, it just hurt my heart so very much because, she's just completely innocent, and that's not the type of, something that, was completely undeserved. But anyways, I was hypnotized to think the blurry pictures on Billie Eilish's Instagram meant they were going to decapitate her with a chainsaw. So, these are the pictures that I'm referencing that she posted on her Instagram story as well. And, let me see, so, everything's kind of a little bit, wow, scary. But yeah, you can see the tops of those pictures right there. The light right there on the left, and then the door you can see right there, and part of the window. So this one, okay, I was hypnotized to think the necklace picture meant I had people running away from me in Logan City, Utah. I was hypnotized to think that I broke my contract with the city of Logan because the city wasn't safe. I was hypnotized to think this picture meant the city of Logan would be a ghost town when people heard about what happened to me in one of the top 99% safest cities in the United States. I was also hypnotized to think this meant the Mexican cartel was going to decapitate Billie Eilish. And, so that's the picture that cued the thought. Let's see, moving on from that. And this one, this is her with Matthew Tyler Vorsey, who was actually her boyfriend. Although I did not, I was hypnotized to think it meant something entirely different. I couldn't even comprehend the situation at all. Anyways, I'll go ahead and describe it. So, I was hypnotized to think the pictures of them together meant she was being held hostage because Matthew Tyler Vorsey somewhat resembled Charlie Sheen while wearing a baseball cap, thinking it was an implication to the Charlie Sheen has AIDS hypnotic metaphor, and that he was an aide that kidnapped Billie Eilish and held her hostage. This hypnotic metaphor will be discussed at the end of the video. And was discussed in the last video. Let's see. Okay, now I'll go ahead and just start reading first. So I was hypnotized to think the picture of Phineas in the white shirt with blue headphones around his neck, and then the little bit of red there as well. Hypnotized to think the picture of Phineas in a white shirt with blue headphones resembled Freddy from Scooby-Doo, the cartoon, and that it meant he was being held hostage and tied to a chair because I was trying to solve mysteries or crimes. Let's see, and then here you can see a picture of his neutered dog. So that's not a female dog, that's a neutered dog, but I was hypnotized to think it meant they were going to cut off Phineas's reproductive organ. This was both in the same day. And this is evidence of the post. So you can see what I'm saying there. Because, there's further evidence of that. By the way, I had threats that I would have mine cut off, and cues from a picture on Instagram where they had Phineas O'Connell, Billie Eilish's brother, held hostage, and he was wearing a Freddy costume, like off Scooby-Doo, and a picture of a neutered dog. So, you could kind of get the implication where if I was hypnotized to think that's what that meant, before they posted those pictures, by the way, you can see that was also from his Instagram story. And then, I posted that, so, and tagged them in it as well. Let's see, so, alright, there were some screenshots of a Facebook post, which is evidence of hypnotic cues. Or these are, so. I was hypnotized to think that the pictures Billie Eilish posted on her Instagram of the puppies and Billie Eilish's song Bad Guy was a reference to the Charlie Sheen has AIDS hypnotic metaphor, because the hypnotic metaphor references breaking my legs for medications in jail and becoming injured, like my dog, when I was framed for assault charges. I discussed this hypnotic metaphor in detail in part 1, so make sure to watch it if you haven't already. These are the pictures that I'm referencing, especially because the dogs are actually next to her knees, as you can see. This is what I posted that you can see some of the relevance. The doctors wanted me to break my legs for medical malpractice because of medical malpractice when they discontinued my Ambien prescription, and I was sleep deprived getting ready for work and stepped on my dog's legs and toes on accident. So they framed me for aggravated assault charges, and when I started investigating Donald Trump organizing hypnotists for the premeditated murder and abuse of McKay Cody James, and Bennett Pala's premeditated murder as well happened, and Billie Eilish received premeditated death threats, I have enough evidence to convict them. Not exactly a complete sentence, but regardless, this is organized crime I'm stepping on right now. You can kind of get the metaphor there. Which they're trying to frame me for to minimize the importance that I stepped on my dog's legs from sleep deprivation. So, I was also threatened that the doctors wanted me to break my legs. Anyways, moving on from that. Let's see here. Oh, there's a little bit more evidence. You can see I'm mentioning G-Eazy and some other things. Make-A-Wish Foundation. And Billie Eilish. Okay. Next up is scratching the record. So, let's see here. I'm just going to look at this to see. That's what that meant. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so it's not in the description on this Facebook post, but you can see here it's a YouTube video where Billie Eilish scratched. I was hypnotized to think scratching the record meant something bad and abnormal, like as if someone looking at the record may ask, is that a scratch? Kind of like if you looked at a album, like a vinyl record. I was hypnotized to think that scratching the record meant I was making G-Eazy's music look bad because Eminem was my favorite artist. Kind of referencing like, when you scratch a record in a rap song. Making that era type of noise. I was also hypnotized to think that if I broke the world record for hyperventilation syndrome, that it would be scratching the record because it wasn't supposed to happen. I was also hypnotized to think that Billie Eilish getting scratched meant she was getting hurt, and that if she was murdered, that she would be scratching the record in history, because the records of events in history would be something that wasn't supposed to happen, like how they threatened me that they were going to make me look bad for doing the right thing and helping people, because that's what happened as a result. That's at least what they hypnotized me to think. So, let me see here. And I didn't actually know at the time what that was supposed to mean, or I had it repressed from my memory. As soon as I would try to tell anybody about it, or hypnotized to think that it was something else. Anyways, let's see here. Lovase Ovidar. So I was hypnotized to think you're going to forget it meant you're going to forge it, meaning that they were going to forge charges against me. And you can see here I had a Facebook message So she better be okay, man. Hypnosis is a form of mind control, so it can do things that people could forget. And I was hypnotized to think that was a message to me that I was hypnotized to write, that was pre-scripted, because forget meant forge. As you can see in that example. So let's see here. The Google Translate pictures show a slightly varied alteration on the translation after translating it back to English. These are screenshots from a Facebook status, which is further evidence of the hypnotic metaphors and hypnotic cues. So as you can see here, I'm saying she is alive and healthy, and then as you can see here, it says, as long as I am safe. Doesn't even have the word healthy either, I noticed, but yeah. So, putting that in Google Translate and then translating it back. So I was hypnotized to think that they were altering that when I was trying to negotiate what I believed was a hostage situation. What I was hypnotized to believe. Anyways. And then moving on from that one, let's see, so Donald Trump, Goya. Alright, so I was hypnotized to think Donald Trump advertised for Goya beans in the White House as a metaphor referencing opening a can of beans, referencing framing me for assault charges I didn't commit. I was hypnotized to think that letting me know what it meant was spilling the beans. So as you can see here, that's an example. That's kind of an example right there. And then in the status, you can also see me mentioning I was hypnotized to think she was dying when my cell phone was dying, and that she'd be dying if I didn't charge it enough, which is further evidence of the multi-billionaire ransoms and Billie Gates hypnotic metaphors. And then you can see here, I don't know if it didn't or didn't, because I was hypnotized to think she was dying when my cell phone was dying, and that she'd be dying if I didn't charge it enough. And let me see, so the part where I referenced the death threats being brutal, like butchering a cow referenced being hypnotized to visualize a video, I was shown of a cow having its eye gouged out whenever I tried to eat any food that wasn't vegan, which resulted in me becoming vegan for a brief period of time because the visualization made me very nauseated. And so what was said specifically there, it meant that death threats could be absolutely brutal, like butchering a cow, or a better example is a lumberjack cutting down a tree. Let's see, so next up is Warren Buffett. Okay, so I have some evidence that I posted about him, also sent some messages. So, let's see here. I was also hypnotized to think that Warren meant warning, and to think that it was a method of warning me that Warren Buffett gave me multi-billionaire death threats. I was also hypnotized to post a link from Fool.com of one thing Warren Buffett says you should never do, instead of the other two links from Fool.com of Warren Buffett, Warren Buffett wisdom to ring in the new year, or how to invest like Warren Buffett, as a method of concealing evidence, because the link referenced betting on U.S. healthcare instead of quotes of Warren Buffett discussing quality over quantity, because the social worker at Jordan Valley Medical Center told me a lot of hypnotic metaphors regarding quality over quantity, including because at Jordan Valley Medical Center were about quality over quantity. And they wanted me to post less convicting evidence on Facebook. I was also hypnotized to think Warren meant warrant, because the hypnotic metaphor referencing multi-billionaire death threats was used as a method to make me miss my court date for the assault charges I was framed for, so that they could put a warrant out for my arrest and arrest me. The last screenshot is the article that cued. the quality over quantity and multi-billionaire death threats hypnotic metaphors. So, led up, part of it, but anyways, you can see this was quite a bit ago. There is evidence though that I sent that to her, and I believe the following messages in that also as well. But number one, quality over quantity, and you can see, so that's just a screenshot from Fool.com, and I actually ended up posting a different one on the Facebook status, but regardless of such, moving on from that one. Next is a car crash. So, I was hypnotized to think car crash meant cartel. The top and bottom Facebook posts and referenced a car crash as further evidence of the hypnotic cues and hypnotic metaphors relating to the because acronym or hypnotic metaphor, or the acronym hypnotic metaphor. So anyways, as you can see here, and the post says, Billie Eilish died by a car crash, Channel 46 News, what is this? This isn't funny. And as you can see, obviously, prank, right? I didn't exactly notice that, especially because this part right here, the little toy or action figure that says you got owned, really distracted attention away from that part that says you've been pranked. So, let me see here. As you can see, and a truck crashed into Billie Eilish's car and she died on the spot. So, Billie Eilish died by a car crash. And then right here, I just got some strange feeling that I've been hypnotized as a warning that Billie Eilish might get in a car accident or something soon, really soon. I hope no one gets hurt and that everyone is safe. Have a good night. That was on March 22nd, 2021. Strangely enough, that was actually before this status, or before I ever saw that specifically. But, that's a screenshot, so I can't show you further evidence at the moment. But moving on from that, now I have to show you a video, but I'll go ahead and start just reading this first. I was hypnotized to think that the song All the Good Girls Go to Hell meant that they were going to make an example out of Billie Eilish for her political activism for environmental preservation by making her die for our sins like Jesus. I was hypnotized to imagine Billie being tied to a chair and decapitated with a chainsaw when I looked at her album cover with her sitting on the edge of the bed when I listened to the song All the Good Girls Go to Hell. And that's from her album, When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go, by the way. I was also hypnotized to think all the good girls go to hell meant all the gaslighters go to hell, which we can interpret all the gaslighters go to jail in a literal sense after I make gaslighting illegal with the petitions I have. And let's see, so I was also hypnotized as a form of reinforcing the belief that all the good girls go to hell meant Billie Eilish was going to be decapitated with a chainsaw because all the good girls go to hell rhymed with Billie Eilish cartel from the because acronym. And then moving on from that, in this video, I briefly discussed the because acronym as further evidence of the hypnotic metaphor. And let's see here. And you can also see that in the video I mentioned Joe Biden and 3 different multi-billionaires, including Donald Trump, Warren Buffett, and Bill Gates, as further evidence of the multi-billionaire death threat post-hypnotic suggestions. And I downloaded the Facebook Live video, which was originally recorded on April 17th, 2021. So as you can see here, that was the Facebook Live video, April 17th, 2021. And then at 2.5 minutes...
And I don't know if it's honestly like, oh, that was it, 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 that was it. It was this, but I need to buy a second phone because I think I might have sent a message saying because I was hypnotized to write, and when I wrote this, it says, so I wrote because, and then I wrote Billie Eilish, so for the B I wrote Billie, for the E I wrote Eilish, for the C I wrote cartel. For the A, I wrote anyone, or anyone's. And then U, useless, and then the S, snitches, and then E is eventually. That's why she's like in danger.
Because Billie Eilish, cartel, anyone useless snitches eventually, or also actually because everyone and anyone useless snitches eventually. So anyways, I actually have another video that I can go ahead and show as well. I didn't get to the part where I start talking about the billionaires that I referenced, but in this one, we'll go ahead and get to that. So this post was on April 19th, you can see, 2021, and hypnosis inhibited my vocabulary. There may have been messages that would be misunderstood, and I'm trying to be nothing but literal. And that's why, when it comes to the hypnotic metaphors, I was trying to be nothing but literal, because I didn't know what the hypnotic metaphors meant, and I thought that the captors would interpret the metaphors as some type of threat, or meaning something other than the literal definition, to add even more confusion to the situation. So this was also another Facebook Live video downloaded on that day, April 19th, 2021, that I downloaded as evidence of the multi-billionaire death threats and ransoms, hypnotic metaphors. And then 455 to 519.
So like I have some multi-billionaires that kind of like I did them a solid and they owe me a solid, right? Just kind of like unique favors. So other than that,
so there's that. And in that same video, I'm not going to show it right now, but I also discussed how I was I believed that other people were taken hostage. But now we're going to go ahead and move on to the hypnotic metaphors that I was just referencing, actually. Let's see here. Okay. So anyways, alright, I was hypnotized to post a series of hypnotic metaphors on my Facebook that referenced negotiating hostage situations. When I was hypnotized to think I had to negotiate a hostage situation as a method of occupying my time and making me miss a court date for the assault charges that I was framed for. One of the hypnotic metaphors was a quote from one of Billie Eilish's concerts. "Are you guys okay? Hey, you guys need to be okay, because y'all are the reason I'm okay, okay?" And then, as you can see here, that's what I posted. Let's see here. That was on March 7th, 2021. I was hypnotized to think the quote referenced surviving gaslighting and to think it was a hypnotic metaphor that I could use to check on my family and friends' safety in a hostage situation. Then, moving on from that one, let's see. Okay, right there. Alright, so the world's a little blurry was a hypnotic metaphor referencing not seeing a clear outcome for the hostage situation. I was hypnotized to think the world's a little blurry and to imagine a storm outside to set the mood for me negotiating the hostage situation unclearly. I was hypnotized to imagine the storm settling the rain stopping, the sun shining, and the storm clouds clearing up after revising and editing the Facebook posts about the hostage situation and including the specific hypnotic metaphors. They told me, so the clear sky was supposed to represent the hostage situation clearing up and a clear outcome for the hostages. I was also hypnotized to think the world's a little blurry meant the hostages are a little blurry, because I couldn't tell whether or not the hostages were going to weather the storm and survive. So I was also hypnotized to post, "It's so hard to think with the hypnosis. My memory and thoughts are blurry." I posted "are blurry," yeah, okay. And then the world's a little blurry. So, as a hypnotic metaphor describing the hypnosis impairing my cognition, inducing confusion, repressing my memory, and impairing my ability to articulate speech normally. So, so that was me describing how, like I was having difficulty thinking and negotiating the hostage situations. And, I didn't want anyone to act irrational or anything along those lines, trying to explain the difficulties I was having, hoping that the captors would become more patient. So, anyways, let's see. I was hypnotized to think her song, "Everything I Wanted," was a hypnotic metaphor referencing me getting to talk about everything I wanted politically on NBC and keeping Billie Eilish alive in a hostage situation by offering the ransoms, offering the kidnappers everything they wanted for a ransom. I was hypnotized to post, "What I'm trying to say is, as long as I get what I want, I'll give you what you want. I want to keep everyone alive and healthy. I'll give you everything you want." Referencing the song "Everything I Wanted" as a hypnotic metaphor to help me negotiate the hostage situation with everyone getting everything they wanted. Let's see, so I'll go ahead and show in here as well. It is right here. What I'm trying to say, as long as I get what I want, I'll give you what you want. I want to keep everyone alive and healthy, and I'll give you everything you want. And of course, further evidence is me talking about hostages, talking about ransoms, and that's so it's the word "want," by the way, that was indicating that. So specifically, and then the short film "Not My Responsibility" by Billie Eilish contains sexually suggestive references, and I was hypnotized to think of my mother and to think I was supposed to objectify Billie Eilish, and to think that by not objectifying her, I was endangering her life, because if I didn't objectify her, it meant that she was special or important to me, and that they could affect me and hurt me by hurting her. Which is kind of another reference to saying, it's not about how many hostages there are, it's about the quality of the hostages. Well, I mentioned all these things, and let me see here. So, it's right here. Anyways, so I was hypnotized to think that the song "Therefore I Am" meant they were objectifying me, which meant they were treating me like an MK Ultra experiment, kind of like how experiments are supposed to be objective as possible. Just like how, psychology and sociology are taking subjective sciences and trying to make them as objective as possible. I was hypnotized to post the hypnotic metaphors on my Facebook of Billie Eilish's songs and artwork that they related to negotiating hostage situations. I was hypnotized to think that the song "Not My Responsibility" meant that I was endangering Billie Eilish's life by not objectifying Billie Eilish, and that it was not the social workers it was not the social worker at Jordan Valley Medical Center's responsibility. Which is why I was hypnotized to think the song "Not My Responsibility" meant that. Let me see. So I was also hypnotized to use the hypnotic metaphor, "We're not friends or anything, and she got death threats, as well as my friend Bennett Pala got killed because of my politics. Therefore I am," referencing the song "Therefore I Am," "responsible to keep her alive and healthy and negotiate hostage situations if necessary. I'm sorry." And this was referencing the Billie Eilish song "Therefore I Am," describing how they threatened to kill innocent people, and I didn't know if they threatened to kill innocent people. I didn't know if they couldn't kill my family and friends. So let me see here. You can see right here, "We're not even friends or anything, and she got death threats, as well as my friend Bennett Pala got killed because of my politics. Therefore I am responsible to keep her alive and healthy and negotiate hostage situations if necessary." And you can see, I believe I might be talking about, objectifying. Someone that won't objectify you is rare. I think I was hypnotized to think of Selena Gomez when I typed up the word rare, by the way. Because she has a new album that came out that was entitled Rare. So, let's see here. And I talk about like the concept of zoning out, for example. I apologize for the profanity, but yeah, anyways, so there's that. And then also, here's another Facebook post. So this one was on April 20th, 2021. This one was March 31st. Quite a bit before that, actually. But you can see here, "I love the song. I love how she wears baggy clothes." Another reference to objectifying, right? And how baggy, comfortable clothes, like how she usually wore baggy, comfortable clothes because finding someone that won't objectify you is rare. So, "I love how she wears baggy clothes. I'm honestly just sick of people objectifying me. My heart isn't a toy. I'm a human. I have feelings. Get my name out of your mouth and stalk someone else for once. Why don't we objectify the planet Earth for one and objectify reality? What is it? What's the reality? Objectify your behaviors and think about what our behaviors are doing to these objects. Are we progressively making this object called Earth uninhabitable for life to reproduce? And are we unconditionally living in denial? Because to say the least, I see objects thrown on the floor, referencing littering. I see fossil fuels burned carelessly. There's no regulations for it. We're running out. I see people who actually cover up the reality with fabricated lies on a daily basis. What do you have to show for yourselves? We literally have no practical recycling programs. They are a joke. Most recyclable materials just get thrown in the garbage. Like, we have to go far out of our ways just to find recycling bins outside of our homes. Some people won't use trash cans that are 10 feet away. This is reality. Accept it. By the way, in the state of Utah, which is what I'm referencing specifically with this, most businesses do not have any recycling bins. So that's what I'm referencing there specifically. And if that's one of the problems, then I mean, it definitely does make it difficult if you have to walk, say, for example, a mile just to find a recycling bin, or drive a mile just to find a recycling bin for, something that you bought that had some plastic, for example. So anyways, accept it. We are denying our children a future. They won't have a fraction of the luxuries we have. We'll have to work harder, obtaining less results, and multiplied ecological issues. At the rate we're diminishing our ability to preserve delicate ecosystems and resources, not just in the United States, our planet is actually becoming more and more uninhabitable, is what I meant or intended to say, every day. Our planet is being suffocated with exploited resources, abused with trash and garbage, and neglected by our governing officials and also or leaders, right? So, and then I posted a link to that music video. And let me see here. So, that was that. Now we're going to go on to the very last part. So, alright, I'll go ahead and get started. I was hypnotized to think drawing Valium pills meant I had a contract with Intermountain Healthcare for a discrete medical malpractice settlement agreement. Real quickly, I also wanted to just go back and point this out. So it was, with this one, the world's a little blurry, and I was also hypnotized to think it was when I was talking about the hostage situation being clear or unclear, that I was hypnotized to think about how I was hypnotized to not be able to speak clearly. So, just wanted to point that out, and how I was hypnotized not to be able to mention it until much later in the video. I was hypnotized to think drawing Valium pills meant I had a contract with Intermountain Healthcare for a discrete medical malpractice settlement agreement. I was hypnotized to draw a little stick figure climbing a mountain, and I was hypnotized to think that if I wanted the jail time to be sentenced over my head so that I could be released from the jail, that I should draw a little arm over the stick figure's head. I was hypnotized to think the mountains meant Intermountain Healthcare, and that the stick figure climbing the mountain was me trying to get healthcare. I was hypnotized to think that if I actually had medical malpractice and if I wanted healthcare, that as long as I didn't sue him, the CEO of Intermountain Healthcare, or talk about anything related to medical malpractice, that I could plead no contest in court and get the jail time sentenced over my head so that I could go to the hospital to get healthcare, and that he would give me 50% of the company, and all that I had to do was ask for Valium in the emergency room. I was also hypnotized to think that the message goes right over little Billie's head after drawing the little arm over the stick figure's head, and that the stick figure was little Billie. This was done because the metaphor itself is a hypnotic suggestion implying that if I wanted or needed to get healthcare, that I needed to plead no contest in court, and the stick figure was named Little Billie just to confuse me so that I wouldn't know I was being deceived. In this context, I was hypnotized to think Little Billie was a metaphor referring to a young child that would be watching the movie about me produced by the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Similar to how John Doe is a commonly used metaphor to reference a male's name, and Jane Doe is a commonly used metaphor to reference a female's name. The metaphor was used to make me believe the unfortunate circumstances that I couldn't get the medical care I needed in jail would go right over little Billie's head, so that I wouldn't portray the image that the Make-A-Wish Foundation was scary as a method of instilling the belief that the message would be going over someone else's head and not mine. Anyways, this is an example of like the mountains that I was hypnotized to draw. You can see the little stick figure labeled Little Billie. Getting to the top or the peak of the mountain meant healthcare, and that would be the stick figure with the arm over its head, meaning I wanted the jail time to be sentenced over my head so that I could go and get healthcare. Basically the jail time being in my way of getting healthcare as well. The hypnotic metaphor is an isomorphic metaphor that implied Little Billie was climbing the Intermountain Healthcare mountain to get healthcare, and that by Little Billie putting his arm over his head, he put the jail time over his head, so that he could finish climbing the Intermountain Healthcare mountain to get healthcare. The story entertained and distracted my conscious attention and awareness so that I wouldn't question the hypnotic commands to not talk about medical malpractice, not sue him, and plead no contest in court. Little Billie was actually supposed to be me, but the metaphor referred to a young child to confuse me so that I wouldn't question the metaphor or hypnotic commands. So, let me see here. The hypnotic command, by the way, was to plead no contest. I believe I stated that. That's how I would be able to, so plead no contest, and I get the jail time sentenced over my head, and that's the metaphor. You can see there's even a visual representation here of it, like a diagram. I was hypnotized to think I could only be given STDs I wasn't tested for during the movie, and that if I got tested once for an STD during the movie, that I couldn't be given that STD in the movie, worsening the metaphorical threats was cued the more I insisted on getting a comprehensive STD screening as a form of punishment for attempting to think rationally and logically. So there was supposed to be a period in there. Right there after that. So during the movie that it's supposed to be after the word movie. Sorry about that. So, yeah, you can actually kind of see it's very small though. So worsening metaphorical threats were cued the more I insisted on getting a comprehensive STD screening as a form of punishment for attempting to think rationally and logically. I was hypnotized to think that telling the doctors I needed to get tested meant I was only trying to get tested for one STD, and that it meant I was going to have a girl test me for sexually transmitted diseases by having sexual intercourse with me. I was hypnotized to think that if I said I needed to get checked for STDs, that it meant I was trying to get tested for a few different STDs, and that I was fighting the hypnosis, and to imagine it was like playing a game of chess because they just put me in check. I was hypnotized to think that, and I was also hypnotized to imagine somebody moving a chess piece, by the way. So, I was hypnotized to think that if I said I needed to be screened for STDs, that I was trying to get tested for all the different sexually transmitted diseases, and that I was going to be screened by putting me in a latex condom because they were going to give me too many sexually transmitted diseases to ever be able to have sexual intercourse without a condom again. Let me see. Due to the threats of contracting STDs, I was hypnotized to think that if I went to the hospital to get tested for STDs, that I was supposed to ask for one of the medications Klonopin or Valium. I was hypnotized to think that two different medications meant different things without knowing what they were supposed to mean as a method of confusion and to distract my attention away from the reality of the situation. I was hypnotized to think that the medical care I received would be more dependent on which medication I chose to ask for than the actual test results. I was hypnotized to think that Klonopin meant I was making a movie scene, and I was hypnotized to think that Valium meant an emergency medical intervention for my movie, and to not know what they were supposed to mean until I moved out of Colorado, and to think that I could only get an emergency medical intervention for my movie in the state of Colorado. I was also hypnotized to think that asking for Valium or Klonopin also meant multiple other different things to elicit confusion and to prevent me from pleading not guilty and going to trial for the assault charges I was framed for. So then I go into further detail with that. Let's see. I was hypnotized to think that Valium meant I need something longer lasting, and I didn't know. Medical malpractice script. The CEO of Intermountain Healthcare made a deal with me that if I didn't talk about medical malpractice, that he would give me 50% of the company, and that all I had to do was go to the hospital and ask for Valium. Valium, I was also hypnotized to think meant Haley Mathers, which is Eminem's daughter. Told me that Haley Mathers was supposed to make the Make-A-Wish Foundation seem less scary. I was also hypnotized to think that Valium meant an emergency medical intermission in my movie so that I could get actual medical care. And then with Klonopin, I was hypnotized to think of the script being It's Not My Fault, and I was also hypnotized to think that Klonopin meant Delaney. And I was also hypnotized to think that I was supposed to go back to Unity Health which is a hospital, their emergency room, out in Arkansas, and that I was supposed to go in, be walking into the emergency room with my head down, saying, "It's not my fault. I need Klonopin more than I need Delaney." And then jail court plea scripts. So I was hypnotized to think guilty meant Delaney would feel guilty for not sleeping with me. I was hypnotized to think not guilty meant Delaney would not feel guilty for sleeping with me. And no contest, I was hypnotized to think I would choose Delaney no contest. So I was hypnotized to think that in order to get out of jail, I had to be sleeping with somebody because it was part of my movie. And I was hypnotized to think that I had two contracts with two girls that I didn't have to, that I had contracts with, that would, sleep with me for the movie. And since Haley Mathers was out in California, and I wasn't able to leave the state of Utah, I decided to, and I never even met her. I was like, okay, well, I'll, do the Klonopin. So that was Delaney. And then when I met with my lawyer, this was cued when I went to go in and talk to him. And he told me that the prosecutor, was willing to drop the second-degree felony aggravated assault down to a third-degree felony aggravated assault, as long as I pled no contest or guilty. And I was sitting there for a very long period of time, not sure what it meant, not sure what to do, but, my lawyer recommended pleading no contest if I decided to take the agreement. And basically the concept would be if I pled not guilty, that would mean that, I wouldn't be sleeping with Delaney. And in other words, I wouldn't be able to get out of jail. So the only way that I would be able to get out of jail was by pleading guilty or no contest. Because, for a movie, it would be Delaney would feel guilty for not sleeping with me. Well, that doesn't exactly sound necessarily the best. But no contest, because, that would be guilt tripping her into doing it. You know what I mean? Which doesn't sound exactly the best type of movie that you'd want to watch, right? But if I pled no contest, I was hypnotized to think that meant I would choose Delaney no contest, which would sound better, right? I would choose Delaney over everybody else, no contest is what that implied. So, in a movie you would think, oh, that's cute, romantic, whatever. So, anyways. Bear River Mental Health Court contract. In order to avoid a multi-million-dollar medical malpractice lawsuit, Bear River would give me mental health court to get me out of jail so that I wouldn't have to break my legs just to go to the hospital to get my medications, since they don't prescribe controlled substances in the jail. And I was hypnotized to imagine a Klonopin being the bear, a Klonopin pill being the bear from the Jungle Book, making me feel comforted going to court, because the bear technically, Bear River Mental Health, would give me mental health court to get me out of jail and keep me from breaking my legs for medications. I was hypnotized to think I could fracture my spinal cord jumping off a flight of stairs in jail and become paralyzed from the waist down for the rest of my life so that they could keep me in jail. They did that to make me afraid to do that so that I wouldn't be able to go to the hospital and they'd be able to keep me in jail. Because if I broke my legs, then they wouldn't be able to keep me in jail. So, probation court contract. I was also hypnotized to think I had a contract with probation, and that it was that probation will let me out of jail on probation as long as I didn't shut down the jail. And they hypnotized me to think that it was because they didn't want to make probation look bad for putting people in jail, and that as long as I didn't shut down the jail, that probation would have a jail to send me and other people to. Sorry, I'm hypnotized on my handshake right now, but I was hypnotized to think that since the movie plot that I was told that I was, and hypnotized to think that I was making, was about legalizing marijuana, that they wanted to make probation look good, and they didn't want probation officers to look bad or sick for putting people in jail for smoking marijuana. So they wanted to give me probation to make probation look desirable, because if I was on probation, then I wouldn't be in jail. And what that referenced was how marijuana has a lot of different medical benefits, and probation would look sick for putting people in jail that were self-medicating medical conditions, because they were being not only was it cruel and unusual punishment by denying them the ability to smoke marijuana or to consume THC for medical conditions while in jail, it also was a form of punishment for self-medicating medical conditions. The entire war on drugs was rather abusive to the American people. Anyways, and then further evidence I was hypnotized and framed is seen in these Instagram messages, because the Instagram messages were all dated on May 1st, 2020, several months before the date of the assault allegations I was framed for. This invalidates any claims or accusations that I was being dishonest regarding being hypnotized as an attempt to get out of court. So I'll go ahead and get started. Now, as you can see here, this is to the rapper G-Eazy. I was hypnotized to think that he came up with the movie plot and was going to, I was going to be able to make the movie for the Make-A-Wish Foundation with G-Eazy, and that I was going to be able to go on NBC and talk about it afterwards with G-Eazy. So, what do I have to do to wake up? Do I just go back to Colorado emergency room and tell them I want Valium so I can get emergency medical care? That was on May 1st, 2020. And, this is the part that I forgot to mention. So I was hypnotized to think that they repressed certain physiological and biological functions, such as cough reflex, mucus production, salivation, hunger, thirst, to improve my acting performance. Because, for example, if they didn't want me to interrupt my movie scenes by getting food or water, that basically I would be able to wake up from that if I went to the emergency room, because it was an emergency medical intervention. And waking up implying waking up from the hypnosis. So obviously you can see all the indications in there. And that was also before I had court. The date of the allegations was actually in August, about over 3 months later, August 2020. And let's see, I sent the same message to several different celebrities on Instagram. What do I have on the same date, on May 1st, 2020? What do I have to do to wake up? Do I just go back to a Colorado emergency room and tell them I want Valium so I can get emergency medical care? This was sent to Billie Eilish. This was on the 1st of May. And let me see here. I also sent the same message to Haley Jade, who is Haley Jade Mathers. And I sent her the message, what do I have to do to wake up? Do I just go back to a Colorado emergency room and tell them I want Valium so I can get emergency medical care? And anyways, so I messaged her specifically because I was hypnotized to think that Valium meant Haley Mathers. And I figured that she might know. And then I messaged Will Smith, too, because he's a movie actor. I thought he was involved in this as well. I was hypnotized to, at least. And that's, of course, on the same date, May 1st.
May 1st for the Haley Jade one as well, Haley Jade Mathers. Let's see. And then this is the hypnotherapist that first hypnotized me. Her name is Christine Price. And I'll discuss that at the end. But let's see. So I also sent this to Jorna Lucas. I was also hypnotized to think that he was involved. May 1st, 2020. What do I have to do to wake up? Do I just go back to a Colorado emergency room and tell them I want Valium so I can get emergency medical care? And then Halsey, who I thought was involved and aware of the situation because she was dating G-Eazy earlier that year, and I believe the year before that, or the year before that. So, what do I have to do to wake up? Do I just go back to a Colorado emergency room and tell them I want Valium so I can get emergency medical care? You can see that's on the same date, May 1st, 2020. And then I also messaged Eminem the same thing. I want to write you a letter because this one's a little bit of a different message, but I want to write you a letter because these doctors are making me extremely suicidal and this whole movie production is turning my health into a joke. At this rate, I would want nothing, and I intended to say, at this rate, I would want nothing but to die. I'm only human, dude. And I was also hypnotized to think that Eminem was involved, and I sent him this same message on May 1st. What do I have to do to wake up? Do I just go back to a Colorado emergency room and tell them I want Valium so I can get emergency medical care? And of course, there is further evidence in the wording of the messages I want Valium because of the hypnotic metaphor for everything I wanted. Now there's some more screenshots here that I wanted to show you. This is 3 different Facebook accounts for Christine Price, the hypnotherapist that I referenced earlier. And as you can see here, this is the same person that was in those messages with to Halsey and to Will Smith. And by the way, also I wanted to point out the reason that I was hypnotized, the reason that I sent that was to Halsey and to Will Smith was because Will Smith was an actor, and this was implying that since Christine Price is an author, I was hypnotized to think that G-Eazy was going to make the movie for me, and that Christine Price was going to write a book about it, write a book about my life. So this implied that I wanted to write a book about it instead of make a movie because the acting was too difficult for me and I needed medical care. So let's see here, and you can see that I wrote about that. And the reason why I sent it to Halsey was because Halsey used to date G-Eazy. So by sending that to Halsey, saying that I wanted to make a book instead, right? Well, that's the concept. Now you can see here, there's evidence May 1st at 8:02 p.m. I don't know what year that was. It doesn't specify, does it? Well, anyways, these were in 2020, even though it doesn't show that it was the year 2020 in these pictures, and the reasoning for that, they could be very old screenshots that I had saved on Google Photos. But I messaged her, how much money do I have to pay you to wake me up? She responds, and she changes the subject, completely. She doesn't even ask, wake you up from what? And she just tells me that she'd like me to get some support and asked me if I would be able to see a master healer for an effective intervention. And you can see that I also said, what's your proposal? I need medical attention urgently. And you can see here on May 1st at 8:02 p.m. I typed up, you gave me hypnotherapy. How much money do I have to pay you to wake me up? I was delirious. I'm in desperate need of medical attention. And then on May 1st at 8 p.m., how much money do I have to pay you to wake me up? So there are those for you. And that would be it for this. So again, I do appreciate watching the video. Please make sure to watch part 2 of 2 as well. And when I said why else would I ask, what do I have to do to wake up, if it wasn't pertaining to waking up from hypnosis. So anyways, thanks for watching the video. Presented quite a bit of evidence in that, and have a wonderful day.